So, hi everyone.
Hi. Hello, everybody. Half of you I talked to on the phone over the past 2 days. Hi. Thank you so much for being here. Jen, do you want to start or should I?
You can go ahead and start. I'm going to keep
Knew you
letting
were
people
going
in
to.
as they join.
So I'm going to just say a couple of quick disclaimers to the people who are here and or watching this video later. I got to stop swiveling in my chair. Hello, I'm David Blue. I am a career actor, writer, producer, director, everything from co-star to series regular. And I am personally saying that I have not made an official decision. I am waiting until I get as much information and talk to as many people as possible. It doesn't even matter how I am leaning. We are here to talk and to, as nonpartisan as possible, just express and learn everything that we can. So this is not an official SAG meeting, even though a lot of us here are parts of things or delegates or reps or board or whatever. This is for members by members, even though we have these reps in attendance. Please keep an open mind as much as possible. Come ready. I hope you did. This is being recorded as a warning. I'm an actor. I talk for a living. A couple of quick things just to kind of keep our time concise and effective. Number one, we love all of us, NegCom. God bless you for your time, your sacrifices, your everything that you have done this entire fight, and everybody who struck. But right now, we love you, NegCom. God bless you. It has now been said, every person asking a question does not need to say that first. That alone will get 100 more questions answered. Let's just assume that is the preface to every question. Honestly. And when you guys hear questions, I want you to hear that in your head real fast. Like, we love you. Thank you. Number two, questions. Please, questions, not statements. Statements will just take up time. As much as possible, whatever your question, whatever you guys want to express and get answered, try to make it as concise. Ask what you need to have the question posed so that they can answer it and we can absolutely answer your question, but get in as many as possible. Number three, we don't need to hear how you're voting. We don't want to really hear how you're voting. And I definitely don't want to hear if you've already voted. Oh. So just keep that to yourself and let's just talk about facts and understanding and all of that, if you don't mind. Prepare as much as possible ahead of time. And very importantly, and I think as actors, we can all agree to this, listen everyone, because you have other questions that might be answered while you're waiting to ask yours, and yours might be answered while you're waiting to ask yours. Because I'd really love to avoid repeat questions. We've all watched the town halls, and good Lord, Duncan has the patience of a bottle of Xanax. We are very limited on time, and we really, thank you, Seamus. We really want to keep this going. I'm going to say one, and then I welcome anybody else who has attended all the informational meetings on NegCom to jump in. Just a couple of quick recaps so we don't have to talk about it. We all want to read the contract. They are working on it. That is the nature of negotiations. They sit down, they come up with all the bullet points. They then send the lawyers off into a closet to tippity type it all out and close all the loopholes so that way they can't screw us with contractual language. It takes longer for us than WGA because WGA are writers, SAG is actors, writers, directors, producers, actors, hosts, DJs, stunts, dancing, singers. There's so many more loopholes to close. But amazingly, in the most recent town hall, Duncan said they think they're trying to actually get it out to people, which is unprecedented. So we're waiting to hear. There's an answer to that. Any other like commonly asked questions we can just knock out right now that you can think of? God, just me? Such an overtalker. Okay. I feel free to introduce yourselves. I hope you guys know everybody wonderful here who's giving up their Saturday morning on NegCom. I would love for you to introduce yourselves, and any one of you, if you don't mind, concisely just say what NegCom is, what you do. You don't mind? Or did?
What we do is negotiating committee.
Yeah, just like what is that? Just real fast.
It means that we are a part of the W&Ws. We get seated by top leadership. We then go into a period of time where we have to bring the national matrix down to a process through what is called plenary to then arrive at the proposal package. And then we spend our time discussing, negotiating that proposal package, sometimes with the AMPTP, across the table, literally, or in our own private caucus where we deal with counters from them and they have to deal with counters from us. And it is a what I call constant taffy machine until you either go on strike, yay for us, we did, and or finally reach some form of a resolution, which at least tentatively we have. Please feel free, other folks, to add something to that.
I will add to it. That was Kevin E. West, by the way.
Thank you. Sorry, Jason. Yeah, Kevin E.
I am Jason George. The only thing I will add is that the negotiating committee is made up of members. We are you, you are us. We literally come from, very pointedly, decidedly, from all the different categories of work that our contract covers. And we also try to make sure that we are we are definitively geographically diverse as well. And we also try to have gender, racial, ethnic diversity, ADA. You try to make sure that everybody's in the room and everybody has a voice. That's part of the point, so that all different points of view, including the different points of view that have, until said unity slate, been different sides of the political aisle within our union. So, and that's always been the case, by the way. I've been on negotiation for about 2 decades now. I was the young kid, now I'm the old dude. And it's always been diversity of category, diversity of representation, diversity of viewpoints, including the political things within our union. So I think that sets it up well.
And I just want to add one thing. Hey, everybody, I'm Natalia Castellanos. The other thing I would add to that is that, based on what Kevin mentioned, is you did have to attend almost all of the W&Ws to be even able to be considered for a negotiating committee. So people that didn't show up, people that didn't, put up possibly proposals or didn't speak on topics, none of that, they were probably not going to be in the running for that, because the leadership obviously wanted to make sure that you work the contract, what the language is about, you know that area of expertise or any of that kind of stuff. So you did have to participate to also know what the entire nation wanted to, what issues were up, which is via proposals. So that you weren't just coming in out of the blue, not knowing and saying you wanted to fight for something when the rest of the nation was like, no, that's not our priority. So I just wanted to add that little thing.
And what does W&W stand for, Natalia?
Oh, sorry, Jason. W&Ws are wages and working conditions. So everything dealing with our wages and our working conditions.
Contract languages. Real fast, and I want to say hi to Nicole. Are any of you, because I don't know, do any of you have legal degrees? I just wanted to ask, because
no, but I played one on television and I worked at a law firm for 2 years.
I was gonna say, Kevin, you sounded like a lawyer, so I just wanted to double check.
So I worked at a law firm, and that's how I got actually my green card. I took my LSAT, but I got a show, so I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
I love that.
And I'll bring up the rear with that and say, I took the LSAT. I was going to go to law school. I do not like all the paperwork. My father's an attorney, so I basically was a paralegal for my entire life, and I'm helping him now that my mother has passed. So I know enough to be dangerous. No, I will not represent you if you get in trouble, because he was criminal defense. And then I will add that some of us nerds on the negotiating committee, and I am not making this up, Jason's been doing this for I won't age him, but he did. But some of us, I'm new to that room. And some of us sitting in this room here, amongst others, spent the 2 years prior to W&Ws reading and discussing. We met once a week. We read and discussed every line of our CBA. If we had questions, we reached out to staff. We got answers. We discussed. We debated. So our nerd selves are wildly on display right now.
Love that.
My mentor was a Supreme Court justice, the youngest and first Black Supreme Court justice of Virginia, until I took an acting class, and then I became an actor. So there, I brought up the rear.
I am suddenly very self-conscious
Why
about my
y'all
ability to play lawyers.
Because we're talking about our almost degrees.
Real fast, we'll go to questions in just 1 second. Just a heads up, when you do, if those of you who don't know Zoom, hit the raise hand button, and then when we call on you, we will either invite you to unmute or remember you. I mean, Zoom should have just been called, sorry, you're muted. Just keep in mind whether or not you're muted. It just makes things easier. And again, as much as possible your question, and we move on with our lives.
David, can I just say one quick disclaimer, just so that, you know, I think it's important. We are not staff, right? We're going to give you as much information as we can from our point of view and from us being in the room, but just remember that we are not staff. And at the end of the day, what our lawyers at the union and Duncan and Ray, they are final say, because they are the ones that are going to, you know, if we have a claim or any of that kind of stuff and we go to arbitration, they are the ones that are going to be fighting on behalf of us, and they know the legal system way more than we do. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
And my last disclaimer, David, for myself, I will not speak for the other three, is that I am here to try and help, as I have been doing in my life in this community since 1991. And please do not try to discern or assume or presume anything about how I feel about where we are based on simply trying to help. I am here simply to try and help.
I like to liken this, and forgive me for reducing it too much, I'm Captain Metaphor. This is all of us after a show, sitting at a high top in a bar, sitting down with our beers, having a chat. Oh yeah, you know, it's drink o'clock somewhere.
Day drinking.
No, but like seriously, this is a casual chat with a bunch of people who are all in the same club, just trying to understand things. And the benefit that we have here, from my perspective, as much as I love the lawyers and I love Duncan and all these people who are working hard for us, what we have in front of us right now, to quote Hamilton, is people who are in the room where it happened. And I would like everyone here to remember that. We can get answers as to why they did things, what they were thinking, what we couldn't get, and why. This is a great opportunity, and I hope everyone just takes advantage of that. Should we start with a question? Yeah?
Hey there, everyone. I'm in the Los Angeles local, and I have a question about the proposed residual structure. I'm just now starting to book co-stars and guest stars, so I don't really get like probably what the higher level, you know, recurring and that sort of actor gets. I'm feeling like I need to see an example of what that proposed structure would look like in terms of you get residuals after 20% of the subscribers on streaming view the work within the first 90 days. Is there a way to do like a sample calculation on one of the more lucrative quarters or years for some of the shows that did reach that threshold, so that I can understand and conceptualize what that would look like for me?
Christine, that's a great question. So you're talking about the fund, which is an additional revenue stream besides our regular residuals. So it doesn't supersede anything. The fund is something completely new to all of us, because, you know, we're just having to put it up. The reason why we wanted the fund is so that because of the way that the model that the AMPTP wants to use, which is it has to meet the 20% watch out in the first 90 days and all of that kind of stuff. We wanted to try to reach a lot more members, and not just the members on certain shows. We don't have the data like us, NegCom, right? In the fact of what shows hit that right now. We would have to wait to see how that activates the, like, how many shows. I think they were saying, and please anybody else correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was like around 40 shows or so that would hit that threshold. And the 75% would go straight from the AMPTP to the members of those shows. So they would pay it out like a residual, a regular residual, right? It just depends on how much is gonna, like, that's gonna break down. And just the way residuals work, for all of us to know, is there's the 3-2-1 and there's time and salary. So for film is what's called time and salary. Right? So how much time you spent on something, how much you made on that film, is how they calculate residuals. And it gets very complicated, just FYI. And then the 3-2-1 is on our TV shows. So if you're a series regular, you fall under 3. If you're recurrings, you fall under 2. And the co-star, which is our day player, fall under 1. And that then there's a formula to then hit how much the residuals from this pool residual that you get in all of that. so the 75% is paid on to the members directly. The 25%, and this is where the new aspect comes, is that they put it in the fund, and we're just going to start getting the fund up and running, right? It's going to take some time to do that and to calculate money. And once that 25%, we as a negotiating committee, we have, we are going to talk to the trustees of the AMPTP and the union to say, hey, we think it would be really great to be able to hit, I'm just giving you a scenario because we haven't sat down and decided all of that yet, but we would want to make sure that everybody on, I don't know, 100 of these shows that are on streaming to get a portion of that money, right? So then that's going to have to, depending on what the formula is going to be, that's how that would work. So as far as your question of, can we give you an actual dollar amount? It's impossible at this time because we don't have how much is in the fund. We don't have the breakdown of how that's going to break down yet, because we want to impact the most members with the most amount of money, because, that was the whole point of that additional revenue stream. Hopefully that helped, Christine. And if I forgot anything, guys, please.
Well, and because I know Jason's going to follow me anyway after this, I'm going to go ahead and add a little something else. Brother, I already know you are. I'm going to add a little something else to the front end of that, just with regards to the base residual, because for someone who's done mostly guest star television in his career, you would do an episode of a show on broadcast appointment television, and you'd get 100% of that on the first domestic rerun. And that obviously went bye-bye 13 years ago, when it became this move over formula. So just understand that we basically got 5 new residuals that are not related to the fund, because the fund is an additional. And everybody also remember that now that the fund exists, and all of the things that currently exist in the fund and whatever structure we eventually arrive at for the 25%, all of that can continue every cycle to be renegotiated, increased, altered, etc. So just bear that in mind, number one. Number two, also know that we increase 2.5%, 2.5% every single year of our contract on the streaming. Please also know that we took away grandfathering, which means that shows that used to be not applicable now are, which is really important. And one of the things for me that I want you to understand, Christine, and everybody, is there were 2 other previous triggers that you had to reach benchmark in terms of subscription to actually trigger certain levels of residual, and 2 of those tiers have now been removed. And so the first tier basically collectively is 3, so it's more money for the very first trigger of residuals. Again, the calculation of it, and I took calculus twice, is a nightmare. That's why I was holding up my little piece of paper and my chart, which requires serious thought process. But just know that it is an area where we did make a lot of improvement. And most notably for me is that we didn't really have any terms in high budget AVOD, ad supported video on demand. And we all know that at least if you haven't seen the articles, FAST, which is free ad supported television, streaming is eventually just simply going to become television. And so the fact that we got those terms equal to high budget SVOD in this pass is pretty tremendous. And now Jason will follow me.
I wasn't going to follow you, but I thought of one little thing that was worth noting. That marker that shows have to hit in order to be eligible for the streaming bonus, that 20% of the audience inside of the first 90 days of exhibition. And somebody check me on this. Natalia, I know you got all the receipts. That's annually. In other words, it's not, because there's a lot of concern about shows that eventually become popular, but don't do it when they first premiere. Well, and now this is also just for shows that are made for streaming. That's important to remember, that if your show was made for network and then sold, you're getting a percentage of distributors' gross receipts. And so you're not eligible for that 75%. Now, we're going to see when we try and figure out, is there a way to get any show on streaming part of that 25% that we have some say over how it's distributed. But the important part to remember is that, if your show becomes popular after that first 90-day window, it renews annually. So in the second season of your show, when everybody's hotly anticipating your return, maybe you have a better shot of hitting that 20% inside of the first 90 days. And that year, you can actually participate in the bonus. I'm pretty certain that it renews every year.
And now I'm going to bring up the rear with Jason probably stepping on the rear again. But I just want you guys to know, if I were you, I would be questioning, why don't you know how that 25% is going to pay out now? How are you coming to us without that finalized? Yeah. The thing is we had to fight to the bitter end to get the fund and to get a piece that we would then have a part of the say-so in how to distribute. So that is how a fund works. We have to set trustees. We have funds with the AFM and such. So we have to set trustees, they set trustees, and then they work that out. But that was a, last piece of our puzzle that we needed to get before we were able to say we have a tentative agreement and bring this to you. So that is why that isn't sorted out. That is why we can't give you those definitive answers yet. And I just want you to understand that. So you're not thinking we just went, that's not the case.
They did not want to let us have control to give more members more money. They just wanted to give a portion of people the bonus, and that's it. And who cares about everybody else? And that was very important for the negotiating committee to be like, no, we want to pay as many actors as possible because we all contribute to those platforms, which is why the fund came about, to try to do that, to have a little bit more power in that aspect. And like Kevin said, it's the following time to negotiate, it's trying to get that 20% threshold way down. So it might be like 10% or 5% or something like that. So more shows can trigger it, and also put more money into the fund, like by 50% or by 75 and swap it the other way around. So again, more members can have a bonus payment for streaming.
Thank you. I just want to make it clear to everybody too, by the way, if you have a question, if you are able, please raise your hand. It's the easiest and best way to make sure it's addressed by the people and addressed on camera. If you hate the way you look today, you can keep your video off. I don't care. But typing in chat is great for following up and us helping to do that. But I'm afraid your question will get lost if you just type it in chat. Raising your hand is the best way to do it.
It's just to add on to that, David, for me personally, I can't concentrate to listen to all of you if I'm reading the chat. So if you could,
you guys, please, NegCom, don't look at chat. Good Lord, don't look at the comments.
All right, I'll finish writing this one and I'll shut up, David.
No, I just mean like my crazy self is looking over here just in case. Yeah. I want you guys to be able to focus on what's in front of you, please. And God bless you, Kevin, because you are doing a great job. For those of you not having chat loaded, just help define HVOD and all the other VODs and Jack VOD and all the stuff in a really clear and concise way for people who don't understand what that language means, because he's apparently a lawyer.
David, before you call on the next person, can I just say, I'm sorry, Alyssa, we were not able to get a fiance into the contract for you.
Damn it.
So I'm out.
Okay, so Alyssa, please.
That is not my question, and I don't like how I look, but I'm going for it anyway. Okay. Hi guys, my name is Alyssa. I was a strike captain on the Disney picket line, and I am asking this question on behalf of one of my Disney picketers. Regarding data security, how can we keep track of our scanned information? How long do they keep our digital doubles, for a set time or indefinitely? If you don't negotiate specifics, what's the standard for keeping our digital information?
Do you want to take that?
Sure. All three of them. The bottom line is at the present moment, unless I'm incorrect about this, and someone will correct me, the security is left to the companies who are actually performing the digital scan. I actually have a whole other thought with regards to that in terms of us eventually maybe choosing to do it ourselves and have them watermarked and keep them and then just dole them out based on consent, but that's a sidebar. And as far as I know, they can keep them in perpetuity. Again, as technology changes, I still think it's possible that they may choose to actually, let's say you booked a job 1 year and you work for that company again 2 years later. No one is aware to say whether or not they would choose to retain the old one or not. That's impossible to know, as far as I know at the moment. But again, everyone, please, please, please remember that our consenting compensation terms are for only that picture. This got said the other night on Thursday when someone said, they just stockpile scans in it. No. Just imagine if you have a closet with 700 shoes in it, as if someone had scanned you 700 times. Every single time a company wants to try and use one of those shoes, they have to pay for it. I don't know that answers the question completely, my lovely Alyssa, but I'm trying.
Can I ask, I swear I'm not gonna do this often, I'm here to be a conduit, but can I piggyback on that just for clarification from a lot of people I've heard concern for? somebody asked a question during the town hall about like, well, can't they use my scan during a strike to make me say all this horrible stuff or for sequels or all of that? And my impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, and again, the contract is being hammered out by people who we have literally hired to try to protect us with loopholes and language. It is for that project, for that time, and for nothing else beyond. They cannot make you then be in an infomercial talking against the union. They can't make a sequel without you, nor does it look good right now.
Correct, David. Yeah. So like that was my biggest concern in the room, right? Like I was like, if we go on strike, what happens with, you know, like, is that going to hold power? That was one of my major things that I was concerned about in the room. And, you know, we were trying to get where it automatically triggered, even if you already gave consent to completely like go on strike as well. Your digital double would have to go on strike immediately. But unfortunately, that's not something that we won in that aspect. So right now, and based on what Duncan said, where it is it stops at that consent. They can't move past it. So whatever you consented for, so, you know, like right now, as we've seen during the strike, there was a few, you know, interviews or whatever that they created with some of the stars for Barbie, let's say, or Oppenheimer. And then it came out after the strike. And a lot of us were like, wait a second, are they doing promotion? Right? Like we were all up in arms about it. And it was because it was already done prior. So think of it in that, oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Natalia.
I'm sorry.
Damn it, girl.
That was spam.
We talked about this.
Did you know that your car's warranty? Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And so right now where it stands is your digital replica will be able to complete whatever little bit of consent you gave, but it can't go past that, right? So they can't all of a sudden be like, ooh, we need to add this scene or we need to add this whatever. They might not actually be able to finish the entire project because there's only consent up to a certain point. And,
I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go for it, Jason, go for it.
I was gonna say the way to look at it is just like principal photography, right? Whatever we already shot, you can edit. If you were looking for reshoots, good luck, baby, I'm on strike. So whatever you consented to for your digital double is like principal photography. They can do that and they can work with it and that sort of thing. Now, the reality is, unless they completely use AI to create the scene with all of the actors in the scene, then more often than not, you're going to need, AI will be used to put your digital replica into a scene that has actual human performers in it. Mm-hmm. And if those scenes aren't getting shot, then AI can't be put into it. So, and the other example, I'm really glad that you brought up that example, David, because they were talking about, your AI could be doing promotion for you, could be doing conventions for you. And the big lesson that we got, and I can't iterate this enough, that the big lesson that we got in the course of the strike is you need performers to promote your movie or your show, period. With box office suffered because they didn't have people out pumping it. Look, Brad Pitt doesn't guarantee butts in seats for every movie he does. He guarantees you, 2 late night talk shows, a morning show, 7 magazine covers. There's no way you can not know that Brad Pitt has a movie coming out, but you still have to make a decision whether you're going to see it based on whether you actually think that it's there. So this is where, remember that when we're talking about AI, there's 3 different ways that we're attacking the problem. Straight up in the contract, which is what you all have before you. Legally, our union has been fighting for right of publicity, literally basically saying that legally, I own my face and likeness, and every person in the state or country, depending if you're talking about the state or federal level, owns their own face and likeness. And then we're also talking about just the realities of the business. So when I'm talking about you need performers to promote, the realities of the business are, why would I ever consent to my AI doing promotion for the movie, right? Why would I because by the way, I don't know if you know, but ChatGPT picks up all of the bias and bigotry that exists in parts of the internet and occasionally will say some really racist stuff. So there's no way I'm ever going to consent to let AI do my interviews, right? Second part of the realities of the business, what self-respecting outlet would ever ask for an interview with Brad Pitt's AI digital replica? That makes no sense. That's not a useful interview for the world. If we sat down with Brad Pitt's computer and did a thing. So just the realities of the business. So given that, and then the other part I'll say about that is that, it trickles down, because if there has to be a performer at the top, nobody wants to act opposite tennis balls. And then at the bottom, we have absolute protections for background. Absolutely, the count has to be filled. So we have the bottom covered, and we have the top is the realities of the business. So it fills in all the way through. So.
And sorry, lastly to that is that don't forget that your digital replica is paid. There's compensation every single time. So if, let's say, you were supposed to work on a film, and I don't know, let's just say you were supposed to work a month, right? Your digital, even if they wanted to use your digital replica, you would still have to get paid for the month, right? Like the entire time that you would have been. And, one of the questions that come with that is, well, how do they know? How do we know if we're getting paid right? That is where comps come into place. And what I mean by comps is writers do this. Before they write, people will ask, well, what's your comp? What is this kind of like? Oh, it's like Sleepless in Seattle with Daredevil. I don't know. That would be a weird ass movie, but
Great pitch.
Someone's writing it down.
Great. Yeah, great pitch.
You sold it. Let's go.
I sold it.
Disney Plus this summer.
So they would come up with that, and it would be like, okay, so if that film is like this, let's see how long usually it would have taken to shoot certain scenes in Daredevil. Oh, to do this type of scene where, I don't know, you have to do some weird stunts and all of this kind of stuff, it normally has taken the human a week to shoot. Well, that is the comp. They can't all of a sudden say we're only paying you one day. It's like, no. You owe us a week, because that's how much it would normally take.
And there's also the actual, again, unless it's fully AI generated, there's usually going to be a human being on set, and they're inserting you into the scene. So you'll actually have the day out of days and shoot schedule for the actual movie. And they'll say, well, I know you paid him for a day, but the scene took 3 days according to your schedule. So suck it up, pay up.
Nicole?
It's paid at your day rate. It's paid at your day rate, whatever your prorated negotiated day rate is.
I know,
Nicole?
David, it's so fun with all of us, but
I'm trying.
the other thing is, they're scanning you in character. So imagine if you're Mike Myers doing Austin Powers, that's the scan they have. They have Austin Powers. So they're not using Mike because they only have Austin scanned. It was just the first one that I could come up with. I know it's an older reference, but it's there.
Freaking missiles.
Hey, I might have worked on that movie. Shut up. Okay, so anyway, so they're scanning you in character. The tech isn't there yet to remove all the character features or to add the character features. It's coming, don't get me wrong, but it isn't there yet. We had 0 AI protections, and we were able to come away with all of these protections that, we have the ability to renegotiate in 2.5 years. The tech isn't able to put one character in a bunch of different things as a different character.
Not NegCom, but to piggyback on that, to remind everybody, please go back and watch the town hall meeting that was posted. It is wildly informative, and all of them. There's one kind of going on right now. Please, if you're here, go watch that. If you're there, come watch this. The video will be posted. I'm speaking to the future. But also, what Duncan said was, I thought, so beautifully said, and maybe I'm a dreamer here. We can still say no. Enough of us say no. Who knows what changes? But even more than that, if we can somehow, with these wonderful contract negotiations, make it cost prohibitive for them to use AI and time prohibitive, then they're not going to. Instead, it's cheaper and easier to use us. Yes, Kevin, what did I do wrong?
No, you didn't do anything wrong. I'm gonna wait until Jason and Nicole and certainly my dear friend Natalia stopped running her mouth. But I'm gonna let her finish, because this is my favorite question of the day, and I'm setting myself up for failure, David. I'm going to try and provide something that is going to blow everyone's mind, because it's not been discussed on this subject, but I'm going to let my dear love Natalia finish first.
So Kevin and I are like brother and sister, just so everybody knows.
Okay.
Like, we have this kind of banter all the time. So, with what you're talking about, David, that is the generative AI synthetic performer, which I like to call synthetic fake. Right. So that's why it's 2. It's digital double and synthetic fake. And my crazy brain now forgot what your question was. So sorry. Yeah.
Well, it's all good. I'm now
What was your
I'm
comment?
just like, you can't like give the foreshadowing that you're gonna drop a bomb, Kevin. Like what?
No, it's about doing something. It's about them working on strike using AI. Natalia. That was the
Yeah,
original.
well, yeah, with the synthetic performer, right? What you were talking about, cost prohibitive. So every time something that we got, and it was one of the very, very last pieces in the generative AI section, which we were extremely concerned about, and we did not want to close until we got that, was the piece of them having to alert the union every time they get a synthetic fake. And so let's just break down synthetic fake for a second, right? Because I think there's all of this confusion with the digital replica. And don't forget, like, I was confused at first. I was like, what is all of this? The synthetic fake is when they pump all of us, let's say, into a meat grinder, and they mix it up and they create a new sausage. I'm vegan. I don't know why I said that, but
It's so funny though, for those of us who know you're vegan. It's so good.
So you know, the vegan, they tell you.
Yeah. So there's that new sausage that we bring out. They did not want to give us that, by the way. They wanted to use synthetic fakes however the hell they wanted, whenever they wanted, and free for all. We did not want that. The benefit of now, we wanted obviously union consent. We did not get the union consent piece, but we did get the part of them having to alert us. What that does is every time they alert us, questions that are going to be asked is, okay, well, who did you use to prompt the system? What names or faces did you use? So that we can also look, oh, you know what, this new character that came out kind of has Kevin's eyes and Jason's mouth. It should be, you have to go and get Kevin and Jason's consent and compensate those actors for this synthetic fake. Now, if that synthetic fake doesn't look like anybody, right? It's a brand new creation. The power that we have then on our side is because they alert us, we're going to be like, great, you want to use that? And this is just me being a crazy number. I'm not saying that that's what it's going to be, but okay, you want to use that? We'll charge you $1 million to use that. We're going to incentivize them to want to use a synthetic fake. So it's more economical and cheaper to use an actual human and your digital replica, right? So we incentivizes. And one of the questions that I've gotten with that is like, well, where does that money go? So just so that everybody knows, that money does not go to the union. That legally isn't allowed. Unions are not allowed to take in money like that, right? It doesn't go into their treasury. Those are things that we do have to talk about as a committee, like where it would go, but it could possibly go to the foundation to help actors. It could, we could probably decide how we can help actors in another way with that synthetic fake, charge per se. So it doesn't go to the union. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that in that aspect. It would be
pension health. It could theoretically go to pension and health fund.
No, I don't think it can, because legally the pension and health has to go straight from them. So I'm not sure on the legality of that aspect, but just
where would benefit members the most?
Wherever it can help members the most, and how we can do it legally is where that would go. So there is a way of trying to control them from using just this amalgamation of weird, a non-actual person.
One other thing to add to. I'm sorry, go ahead, Nicole.
I was going to say, if they can show that it's Kevin and Jason, right? They use their name prompts and their facial features recognizable. They now have to pay 2 actors to compensate them so that they can then take the money it costs them to use that fake in their project, because that's not free to them either. So it's not really financially conducive to them to do that at this moment. So we have the start of that protection at its base point that we can then build on. As the technology changes, we can adapt with it, because unlike before, when it wasn't a mandatory point of bargaining, now that it's in the contract, it's mandatory. So now we continue to grow as we see the technology and we see what they're doing. So we have that it's financially prohibitive a little bit, to then we get to understand how we need to attack it in the next 2.5 years.
And before Kevin brings us home with his mind-blowing explanation, I also want to add that if you look at the language there, we got an amazing thing in that GAI section. It says that you have to notify the union And then the union can bargain consideration, not just bargain for compensation, bargain for consideration. Legally, really interesting because yes, we can say, pay me $1 million or you need to pay whatever to the foundation or what have you. But the union could theoretically, because of consideration, also say, oh, you have to, you're using AI, a generated AI random person to do the stunt. You have to hire 2 stunt people. You have to actually, consideration allows for other things outside of straight up compensation, which could get really interesting. But it all goes back to the point. The whole mantra was consent and compensation, and make sure your whatever AI generated thing is not an incentive to use. It's financially disadvantageous to use an AI than it is to use us. And that's what we've targeted all the way across the board.
And finally, Kevin, and then we'll go on to the next question.
Oh my. Okay. I'm going to address, I know David I'm setting myself up for a real fall here. I'm
Better
going
be good. Better be damn good. That's all I'm saying.
It's going to be damn good. I want everybody to just clear your mind for a second. The question was about them being able to work while we're on strike. Okay. And the other part of this is that yes, in non-AI land, if you didn't finish a production, you obviously couldn't continue to shoot. There were shows and projects that were literally on the brink, a few days, a week away from wrapping production on July 13th when we walked. And in a non-AI world, they couldn't finish. However, this is a leap that a lot of us made that I heard a lot about, and a lot of screaming and hollering, and I've still heard it again, and I'm trying to help quell that by reminding everybody of the following. From now on, because I love, and everyone knows this, I love the engagement that this strike has caused across this country. I have been talking with actors for 32 years as a business mentality, and I freaking love it. Jen Levin was a member of the Actors Network and many other people. What I want you to do from now on is always make sure that you look at this business in the 2 ways that we are paid. I want you to read contract language in the 2 ways that we are paid. We are paid for initial compensation that is during production. And then we are paid, I know we use the word release or air, but the word is exhibition. Everyone, please understand, remember the interim agreements and how controversial they were when they first came out? Understand that if you actually did, and there's probably plenty of people here who actually worked during and on an interim agreement. And funny enough, our contract terms for minimums today is 7%, but you got paid 11% because that's where the strike stopped in our negotiation process, right? If everybody understands that what we had is we had a set of proposals and we worked from June 7th until July 12th. And at the moment we stood up and walked, that was frozen as a moment in time. And we had about 16 or 17 items that we were still holding on. And one of those items was 2% of revenue share. Just remember that. Don't go to where we are now. Go to where we were then. And I'm going to say to everybody in this room, how many projects that were not finished at the moment that we walked, how many of those projects did you see get exhibited while we are on strike? Let me go ahead and answer the question for you. 0. Thanks, Christine. Appreciate it. You want to know why 0? Because if they would have exhibited, they would have triggered the 2% revenue share clause that we left on the table on this side of the strike at the moment that we walked. And they were never going to do that because, first of all, they would have had to pay it. And second of all, it would be something known in law as practice and pattern, and it would have been a problem for anybody else. So please understand, even though the question exists of, and Natalia mentioned it, Jason mentioned it, yes, you have consent and compensation for being paid even if they finish something using AI to finish a production, whereas maybe they couldn't have in the past. The question is, so long as we walk into future negotiations, and this is why this has not been talked about a lot, with really, really crazy, solid terms that you negotiate from that are way up here that they're likely not to like, and you reach a place that's a stonewall of something they don't want to do in terms of the money that has to come out of their pocket. Christine, back to your point about how streaming residuals are calculated, but also now that we have a fund, understand that even if they finish that with AI, the question is, are they really willing to actually exhibit it and have to pay those terms while we walk? So do not forget that there is a difference at a moment of a strike and the terms that exist at that moment between what can be finished in production, but what they would have to cross the line on if they actually exhibit it during the strike. Please don't forget that, because it will do the exact same thing it did this time. None of them did.
Cool.
There you go.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the next one. Alexandra. If I mispronounced anybody's name, I apologize.
You pronounced it exactly right, David. Thank you so much for doing this. My brain hurts already. I think all my questions ended up sort of turning into follow-up questions. So, one, who is in charge of dealing with the comps for AI? Who is in charge of determining that? Are we responsible? How does that work? Jason, you had mentioned on Instagram this idea of double dipping. If you accept an AI project, you can work on another project. Do they have non-compete in terms of that? Is there anything in that language?
I'm so sorry, because I know you were waiting so patiently because we have so many questions. Can you pick two you're most important and ask?
Yes, then skip that one.
Okay.
And two, I don't understand. One of you, maybe it was Jason, maybe I don't know who it was, mentioned the 5 new residuals not related to the fund, and that kind of blew my mind. I don't understand that. So 5 new residuals, and what's the deal with who's responsible for the comps? Those are my 2 questions.
Okay.
5 new residuals was Q. And by the way, I call him Q. It's Kevin E.
West, K-E-W. Go ahead. Somebody answer her first one with regards to comps while I pull out the document.
Yeah, no. So with the comps, they would have because the union has extensive documents and everything that how we're paid and all of that kind of stuff. So they would have, I don't know exactly I think it's contracts that would deal with that as far as having the comps. And I think that that's also something that would be asked, right? And they could see it. Like, they can't all of a sudden say, oh, this is like Mrs. Doubtfire, when it clearly is a Marvel film. You know what I mean? Like, there's a little bit of that. But I think it's the contracts department that would deal with that, Alexandra. I know you talked about, I guess, Jason, you talked about the double dipping. Really quick, I know that was a 3-question.
Double dipping is simply that if they're using your digital replica gets paid for every day of work that it would have taken you to do the same job. And so you're not there. If they, basically it's like you're in Australia, they need Thor to fly by in the background of the Avengers assembling. They don't want to fly him back from Australia. He's working on another project. He's getting another paycheck. So they use his digital temple, but they have to pay him to do it. Well, probably not him because his schedule left. It's so high out there, but you get the idea.
But I think there's also they have to hire them anyway on the project as a human before they can use a digital replica, Alexandra. So it's not like, oh, get my digital replica and.
Right. That's not the case. You have to work on it. It's basically, let's be real. Digital replicas will be used in terms of post-production to finish things off for things that, we realized that you needed to be in the background of that scene. You need to be in evidence, that sort of thing. That's where it's largely going to be used in these early days. And so rather than flying you all the way back from wherever you are in the world to be high-priced background, they throw your digital replica in the background, and you get whatever your prorated day rate is, whatever your negotiated day rate is. The one thing I will add, I was going to add a point to Natalia's point, which, Natalia, you were talking about
the comps.
The comps. Largely, I think a lot of this will also come in claims, because I don't think that the union will be grinding every movie to figure out if every check is being paid properly for digital replicas. I think it will be, in general, and Kevin's made this point in other meetings you've been in, it's going to be incumbent on us. File your claims. File claims nonstop. Anytime you smell something fishy, file a claim. Because just like in the federal law, just like in the law in our country, those set precedent, those set the stage and fill in the blanks and the holes of where the law itself is written. We find, oh, you know what, there's a little space here, a little space there, a little bit of daylight. So in other words, they pay you, you go, wait a second, you shot the massive football sequence in this football movie in one day? I don't think so. I call bullshit. You file a claim, and then they call and say, you know what, show us your entire schedule, show us this and the other thing. And then claims department will get with contracts, like Natalia said, figure out comps and go, yeah, we call bullshit, you got to pay up. So
real fast, not self-promotion at all, but I hear 1,000 voices screaming silently in the union right now. Just a heads up, I wrote a resolution this year that will go to convention delegation floor to be considered to try to see if we can increase claims staffing and training so that claims do not take many years and communication is more clear. Because yes, when you file that claim, you want to make sure you get it quickly and accurately. We're working on it.
Yeah. I think it's like Jason said, I think it's very important. Even let's remove AI for a second. I mean, we as actors should be filing claims for a lot of other things that are not even AI stuff, right? Like I hadn't gotten paid for a residual. And I'm like, this is weird. What is happening? And that's a claim. I'm too long at this audition. They're giving me too many pages. And there's so many things that we can file claims. I know there's a fear as actors. We're like, we don't want to get blacklisted or told anything. But without us, staff is not going to know what's happening on the ground. And so I think it's very important for us to all do. And if we all do it, we're all in it together.
Yeah, and I hope that this year's mass action of all of us joining forces maintains and we continue to be strong as a union, help and police with each other. Kevin, on that final question?
Yeah, and David, actually, without doing it, that is exactly what the union is supposed to be. And understand, guys, that what happens in the room, and Jason has seen this even more than I have in the past negotiations I've done, if you bring a proposal to the AMPTP, and it is something like what we're couching here, they will ask you for the evidence. Well, why are you asking for this? Because we don't have any evidence. This is a problem. They will always come back to the word evidence. And if we don't have enough claims to actually marry and parallel what we've put in a proposal, then they don't give a shit. So it is so imperative that I know it's hard. I know it's fearful. I get it. I realize that many people here may not be okay with it as much because you're earlier in your career. I remember the first time I finally in my career said no. It took me a long. I finally said, fuck this, I'm not doing it. So we have to do this as much as we can. Now, to the point about the residuals.
Real quick button on the last thing you were saying was that even if they don't go all the way through with the claim, the fact that you filed the claim in the first place can be part of that evidence.
That's
even
correct.
If you don't go all the way through. So file it, and then you can still say, you know what, I think there's too much blowback, and blah, 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 blah. So just want to make that point, Kev.
It goes to pattern, Your Honor.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
All right,
again,
Kevin, go ahead. Go ahead, Kevin, go ahead. Go
Nicole,
ahead, please.
with the thing. But
the real thing, Kevin, here's the I'm sorry.
God.
That's good. Attaboy, Jason.
You guys have been in a room together for far too long.
Far too long. Total actual compensation used to calculate got increased by 2.5%. That happens every year. Also understand that a couple of these are in reverse by something being eliminated, which grandfathering a show, being able for it to not be applicable to our raises has been eliminated. So that makes a better residual. Number 3 is same thing. There will no longer be a 35% crediting of scale with regards to residuals that are tied to budget levels. That's a new residual because it's removing a blockade to getting better money. Also for new pictures and new seasons of series that commence principal photography after July 1, 2024, the 20% and 40% domestic subscriber factors are eliminated, making 65% of the lowest domestic subscriber factor all into one, which means your money is going to go up as if it was already automatically tier 3 in the past, becomes tier 1. And the last one is number 5 is that the television agreement, the percentage of total actual compensation due for ongoing long-term exhibition on the initial release SVOD platform increases from 8 to 10% for year 8, 5 to 10% in year 9, and 4.5 to 5% from year 10, and the same for 11 and 12. Some of this always, guys, is related to licensing agreements and how much they are, but there's pieces in all 5 of those that are related a little bit to an initial move over. Some of them have elements of what we used to call syndication in them, and a couple of them are related to simply barriers to more money that have now been removed. So you are right, Alexander. I love the fact you asked it because this shit gets confusing. Please know everything I just said is in, even though I know a lot of people want the MOA, and This is one of the reasons why I love the engagement. We may actually create, in terms of this push, the first time in history, just like broke pattern with the DGA and the Writers Guild on minimums. Maybe we break pattern with being able to get the MOA out during the voting period. But everything I just read is in your 18-page agreement, just so you know.
One last point about residuals. We have, just because it relates to it.
I know, I'm kidding.
By breaking apart advance pay of residuals in your check, we are going to begin to create a way for the union to track when you are actually recouping residuals. In other words, a lot of times people do a job. Let's say you break top of show, you break major role minimum, what we call major role minimum. They call top of show guest star billing. Let's say you get above that. They have the ability to say, it's been the past been as much as 20% of that check. And I'm just gonna use a very round number. You're a series regular or whatever, you got $20,000 check. 20% of that is actually an advance pay of residuals, right? So $4,000 of that. So you actually got $16,000 as initial compensation, and $4,000 is an advance payment of your residuals. So then you wonder, and this is what we always do, how come I didn't get any residuals? The answer is you very well may have, you just didn't see it because it was recouping back that $4,000 that you already got up front. So many actors are unaware of this, so many actors miss it. It started with the $1 million players, we're gonna pay you part of your back end up front. And then eventually start saying, hey, this is kind of a good deal because who's keeping track of when you actually recoup that $4,000 in residuals? Answer is Fox is guarding the hen house. It's on them to, literally Fox, if you did it for Fox Studios, is the one saying, and now I don't trust them. I don't think any of you really do either. But how do we know that we got to 6,000 residuals, $8,000 residuals before they finally said, let's turn the spigot on? Well, now your check will be broken into $16,000 that comes to your agent or whoever your regular initial compensation goes to. And that $4,000 will be broken into a separate check sent through the union, just like it was a residual check. So your agent doesn't commission it because they've been commissioning those residuals, which is a huge problem. But also now the union can say, show me some receipts because you should be tracking when they recoup that $4,000. So show me the receipts when the spigot turns on and they start actually getting their residuals. So for me, that's a huge piece of where people start going, oh, I didn't get the check, but I actually saw that I got $1,000 residual for that show. Or I got this, that, or the other thing. And when you actually start seeing those residuals again, which will, just in terms of understanding where your residual payments are and where those ancillary revenue streams are, that's going to be a huge piece for us. And also making sure that your agents don't commission it.
And I was going to say, just to add to that, it actually makes sure that your agent then really truly fights for higher pay for you for initial comp, because it incentivizes them to do that. Because with them having included your residuals, they're commissioning on, let's say it's $100,000, they're going to commission on all of that. But now because they have to split it, well, they want to try to get initial comp higher because they will make, a higher profit to that. So it actually puts more power in your box. And, not to say that agents are evil. No, I'm not saying that.
No, you're good. You're good. Real fast, everybody, we're scheduled to go to 1 o'clock. I am anyone who can stay late, I very much appreciate if you would. We will still be here to keep talking to you guys. And if you guys enjoy this or will enjoy this, please let us know and we'll try to do another one.
Last vote on the last thing Natalia was saying, your agents, because I had this very, very diplomatic conversation with my agent the other day where he said, hey, what's this thing? You say, so let's say it was 20 grand. So I would commission the 2 grand out of the 16,000 and then you would get the show. I was like, no. You would commission 1,600 out of it. So my point is everybody here needs to be watching if you get an advance payment to make sure that your agents don't try and commission that full amount that is not actually your full initial compensation out of the check that they get hold of. And then you get your money back. Say, no, you commission the 1,600 and then we can have a conversation about whether or not you get a piece of the other stuff.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. And sorry, what I meant is any NegCom, if you're willing to stay late, please, you are welcome to. We will not shut this off until you guys leave and nobody wants to talk. I want to move on to Rebecca's question. There's one quick follow-up that again, people, please don't type your questions in chat. Raise your hand. I do think this is a clarification. If somebody can do a couple of sentence answer to this. On that, is there or was it floated the idea that the digital doubles would be represented on call sheets so we had a paper trail of their use?
Yeah, I brought that up. We're laughing because yeah, sorry.
I wanted a W-DR thing on
Yeah,
the
we
policy.
wanted to put like how, you know, in your call sheets, how you see it says start work SW or start work finish or just work or hold. We wanted to add something else, like Kevin had said, the DR, so that we know that it is that.
WDR.
Okay. We just wanted to ask. I want to make sure because somebody had that question.
That's really great. I think it's because, again, the digital replicas, they are trying to use it mostly in post. Those call sheets are not really done at the time of shoot. So that's the only reason why that isn't there right now. But it's not something that, trust me, I will not let go to any of that. Like,
God bless you. Thank you so much. Patient, wonderful Rebecca, your turn. Please unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hi.
I just scared my cat. I would love to get my head around some of the new guest star stuff. Like Kevin, that is a lot of the work that I have done and am continuing to do. And it looks great, but I'm just trying to sort of put it in a real world context to help me understand how it will be different from what I have done up until this point. So the soft work window and the soft pickup dates, I would just love to sort of understand how that's going to work differently from how it has in the past. And these new guest star structures, the 8 out of 23 days and the 10 out of 30 days, that all sounds wonderful. I particularly would like to understand how that will work in a block shooting or crossboarding situation where I might work on 4 or 5 episodes in one day. Do those each get counted against that? You know what I mean? Will that get counted as I worked one day on each of 5 episodes? I think you get what I'm saying, but the math gets a little confusing on crossboarding stuff, which is a lot of what I have done. And
so
thank you for explaining what major role minimum is. I have never known, and I was going to ask, so thank you.
I'm sure Kevin's going to take a piece of this one. I'm just going to start by saying,
you and Jason do it.
The soft work window is something that Netflix had in their agreement, right? That we had in the Netflix agreement. It is something that, look, we would love for there not to be any of that. And they just tell us when that we're working and not, right? So that was obviously the goal, to try to get there. We got to where they added the soft work window. So what that is right now it's a plus or minus 5 days from when you're supposed to work, right? So on either end, start and finish. And what was happening is that right now, I say right now, but in the 2020 contract, right, prior to this tentative agreement, they never, if you were recurring on something, they didn't have to really tell you when you would start. They just said sometime in this month. And so what happens is most of us as guest stars, we, you know, in recurrings, we want to go and be able to look for other jobs, but it was very hard because we couldn't really commit to another one. It actually happened to me in 2020 where I was recurring on a show and they didn't give me my start date for another show. I booked a pilot and they were like, well, we need to know. And because of COVID, I had to let go of the pilot because my first was the recur, and they didn't commit to an actual date until it was too late and the show had to move on.
And I had to hold her a lot while she was crying.
Yes, you did, because we worked so hard to get that right as actors, and that was just so frustrating. So with this concept, what they would have to do is, if let's say you're on hold for a certain time, they would tell you, which on a guest star it would be like the 8 days on a hour show. It's plus or minus of the 8 days. So they would have to say, well, we would want her to work this time, right? Somewhere within that. And if I get that show and they come to me and they're like, hey, we need you on one of these days, and it conflicts per se, and they haven't fully told me what date I'm going to start on, what that does is we go back to that first production and say, okay, well, she has another, show or whatever. Can you give us we need to know. If not, I need you guys to move the start work went, right? So it gives the flexibility on that aspect, to be able to us not to sit forever and just, because really essentially we're out of work for a month then, right? It's not really just
shrinking those outside date windows.
Exactly. So they can't just give us a huge amount of those work windows. And Jason or Q can continue with that.
You
That
did
was
great.
well said. Yeah.
I think the only other thing there were parts of streaming where major role minimum, we set a floor, they make it a ceiling, didn't exist. So there was free bargaining and it was a bit of the wild, wild west. And now it exists in those terms. So which invariably pulls up most people who get guest star billing, pulls up their money on those streaming services. So
cool. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
David, I'm going to be the person who back. I also want to make sure that everybody understands cross-boarding doesn't exist in our contract. It's not a thing. It's like co-star and guest star. It doesn't exist. That's why we have to use major role performer, modified guest performer, etc. And I have experienced that especially as well, Rebecca, and especially when this is one of the things about this conversation having to do with condition of employment related to AI. Let me tell you, the worst condition of employment ever is a lady who's on a set someplace out of town, can't drive home, and then suddenly someone decides to tell them, hey, listen, we weren't going to shoot this topless, but we'd like to shoot this topless. There has been a lot of issues in our history of our business in which forms of pressure have been used, and cross-boarding also now is one of them. But it's imperative for us to understand that cross-boarding is not an actual legal term in our CBA. It's a vernacular jargon term, just as guest star and co-star are, which is why we don't define them in the contract, because there are people who make, $200,000 for doing a 2-word cameo on a half-hour show because they're who they are. And if you actually try to define co-star, that would limit one's representation and limit you from necessarily being able to be paid $100,000 to do a co-star role on a sitcom. So there's reasons for that. And that's why, unfortunately, Rebecca, it is confusing and it is annoying for everybody. But a lot of what we need to do now in this world is we have to start looking at our contract language genuinely. We have to do, and then start actually extrapolating out, what does that really mean in the real world? I was holding up earlier when we started, I was holding up a little chart with regards to the residuals question that Alexandra asked in terms of total actual compensation and total applicable minimum. I'm telling you, these things do not give you a clear picture of how it gets calculated on your check stub or how it gets negotiated in terms of your representative. But I promise, if you'll take the time to just read one section at a time, really slowly, 2 or 3 times, it will start to come into focus of how this looks, as you said, great phraseology, in the real world, really actually putting this into my life. But just understand, co-star, guest star, cross-boarding doesn't even exist in our contract.
I totally believe you. So just so I'm clear, if I work on one day, 4 different episodes, what we know as cross-boarding, right? Will one day count against each of those episodes under this new guest model? Do you know what I'm saying? So like, you have to work me 8 days. You can work me 8 out of 23 days. If I work 4 different episodes in one day.
Yeah, it says times the episodes. So they would have to be considered different episodes. They couldn't be considered one.
Right.
Cool.
And it all depends if they do a drop and pickup, which drop and pickup is also right.
And on that note, real fast and thank you so much, Rebecca. Those were great questions. Before we go to Shell, I just want to clarify, and this is just my opinion. I think there's some confusion with a lot of people who are going to town halls and questions and things where, again, actors, we have a responsibility to learn our contracts and to understand what we're going for and not just rely on other people to do them, because some people might think that if you work on one day and then you work on another day, that makes you a top of show guest star. A top of show guest star is negotiated by your representation based off of what your contract is going to be. It's not just like a given because of days worked. And you need to know that before you start chasing down, like, if AI replaces you in the future where it doesn't look like trash, how many days you're going to work and what contract are you working under. The base contracts, the scale contracts are one thing. What your representation negotiates for you is a different thing entirely. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And then we're going to go to Shell, I believe. Let me just pin you and make sure you unmute yourself. Hi.
Hey guys, thank you so much for doing this and all your hard work. Personally, want to say thank you. I'm so grateful to all of you. I'm going to try to be as concise as I can on this question because it's a little confusing, but I appreciate all the gains that we've done for the background actors and the series regulars. I'm a little worried about the people in the middle, like the people who would love to get this guest star, and then a series regular now might be available to do like their show and have their AI do an episode. Like it feels to me like a lot of people, like let's say they were like, we want Lucy Liu, and Lucy Liu was like, oh, I'm unavailable, I can't do that. Now it is feeling a little bit like she could be like, oh, I am actually available, you can use this. And so I think, Jason, you mentioned like in your tweet, I'm so glad you're here, but you mentioned how you could be on set and your AI could be doing something else and you can double dip. But I'm just a little worried that it's going to make the actors on top more on top in terms of the money, and then the actor, I'm afraid it's going to affect the barrier to entry, if that makes sense. And I'm curious about that.
No, totally understand. And and this is where I go back to, the realities of the business. First off, technology is just simply not there yet for your digital replica to give a convincing performance as you yet. So in terms of and I genuinely do not believe it will be in the course of the next 2.5 years that this contract has before we have another bite at the apple to go even further with the protections we're trying to get. That's first. Second thing I'll say is, if I'm going to hire you, two things. One, what director wants to not really have you for performance and have all the happy actors that you bring? You know what I mean? Unless you are so, that person would have to be a massive star. And the point that, and again, but if I'm a massive star, am I going to trust my performance to an AI in a project where I have no idea what they're doing with it, that sort of thing? How they make me look, how I come off in the course of the thing. Is it funny in my version of funny? Is it, is the performance, does it bring me? You see what I'm saying? Like there's a loss of control. So yes, I do believe that there are, I won't call them actors, I'll call them celebrities who are also members of our union who will just go and try and get whatever money they can get. And they don't care what the quality of a performance is. But I think virtually any actor that we would all revere as an actor will be, just again, the realities of the business, will be saying, if it's in the background, you can use it. And this is another thing that we need to know, is that just like a nudity writer, you can get pretty granular with what you do and don't consent to for your digital replica to do. I personally won't consent for my digital replica to do anything that I consider performance. I'm like, if you want to put me in the background when I'm high priced, when I'm basically high priced background in the party scene, and you just need to have me in evidence, sure, that's fine. Anything that, and I also put in, and by the way, spread this to all your friends who have, are, people who are high on the call sheet. I intend to put, to perform any stunts that are not able to be performed by a human stunt person. So that, you want me to fly, I can't fly, the stunt guy can't fly, there you go. But in terms of doing the backflips all over the place and everything like that, get me a stunt guy. And I've protected somebody else's work because, and I've also, it just is going to look better. It just does, and will for some time until the technology gets to be amazing. So again, the realities of the business, I think, have a lot of the protections in there for that. But yeah, the reality is that person who's letting a digital replica get used, by and large, you need to be employed. They need to be employed, and at some point in time anyway. And then I think just the realities of quality control. I think they won't really get used that much. If anybody else wants to chime in.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, this was something that we had, spoke about just earlier to somebody else's question, and it's really for that they would have to hire that person anyway for that day, like at least one day and offered that job for their digital replica, then kick in and be able to be used, Shell. So if they're, let's say, not available at all, not even one day, then it would be it would be back to how we are now, where they're like, well, we need to get somebody at least here, because if I'm there in person, I don't want to be working with supposedly another human, unless it's like, I don't know, Godzilla. That, I mean, don't bring a gorilla. Maybe bring a gorilla, because I love animals. So
I will say,
look, you're already bilingual. Stop asking.
I will say this real fast. Thank you so much for answering that, Jason. I will say, I hate this phrase, but the devil's advocate, because I know there's 1,000 people who have been asking me every day. I want to be clear about something that I think has helped them when I've talked to them about it. We're trying to future cast here. And that's very hard to do. And I work in computers and stuff. And the truth is, it moves exponentially. So while we all love to say, and sometimes dissuade fears by saying, I don't think it's going to be there yet, because right now special effects sometimes look like a piece of gum was stretched out a lot. It doesn't mean it won't. That being said, one important thing with this contract negotiation, what these people have done in this room, and if you're liking the contract and what you're hearing here, is set the groundwork, the framework, the terminology, the language, the compensation, and the consent to not only protect the way that technology is right now, but as far as we can see into the future, getting our foot in the door to make sure that if things change, we are able to change with it, versus without this contract or something like it, they can just do whatever they want and we're screwed.
That's exactly it. And and this is another way to look at it, just extending off your point. 2.5 years to the next contract. 2.5 years to the next contract, when, believe me, we have a list of things all over the contract. And by the way, it's been a rolling list for decades of things that need to get addressed and improved, because the business is always changing. But we have a list of things that literally in this negotiation we didn't achieve in other areas outside of AI, but a list of things for AI that we want and will be coming for in 2.5 years. So the question you have to ask in a lot of these scenarios is, do I think that we'll get there, technologically speaking, in the next 2.5 years? And understanding that they've got to notify the union that we're constantly going to be filing claims in the course of the next 2.5 years. So we're aware of where the problems are. But we wouldn't have let the deal go through if we didn't think we'd built a seaworthy ship. It's not pretty, and there might be little drips of water coming through, and we're watching every spot that we know is a little weak, and will be for the next 2.5 years. But we believe wholeheartedly, otherwise we wouldn't have let it go.
Well, and also we do have, just so that everybody's also, aware, we do have that we're meeting with them twice a year, which is very important as well, so that we can keep track of what's happening, what is being used, how are they abusing, how are they not abusing, and hopefully all of us as members can really, with everybody that's on the ground, which is all of us, right, is how can we continually inform our union as to what is happening out there and what they're doing. But hopefully that answered your question, Shell. The whole point behind this was to be able to have the actual actor on set and then use the digital replica, like what Jason said, like for the background.
Yeah. And let me just explain, because I think Dave put something in the chat saying that their spouse who's in IATSE, all the jobs that'll be lost because stuff will be completely done in AI. And again, unless it's a completely and utterly AI generated live action Lion King, live action movie, then unless it's that kind of thing where that's the hook for the movie or the show, there'll be humans on set, and so they'll need sets, and they'll need hair and makeup, and they'll need teamsters to drive, and this, that, and the other thing. And like I said, for the foreseeable future, it's really going to be, I need a digital replica and evidence in the background of a real scene that was shot with real performers in a real space with real crew. So I think that's something to remember, that again, I do not see us in the next 2.5 years getting to as good as video games are, and I'll walk in and sometimes think that my kids, the interstitials in a video game look like a movie. It takes me about a half a second to go, oh no, I see the uncanny valley comes through, and I see that it's performance capture, and I see that it's not really there yet. They've spent insane amounts of money to make it look as much like a movie as possible, to make it look as photorealistic as possible, and we can still tell instantaneously. Until they jump that uncanny valley, we're going to be doing sets, and this will be about filling in when characters need to be in the space, as opposed to completely generating entire scenes and locations and everything like that.
Yeah,
I just want to take a quick moment as privileged host, and I haven't been speaking. Jason, I both equally love and hate that the next negotiation is only 2.5 years away, because 2.5 years is not that long. But again, 2.5 years is not that long. And I think something that, for whatever reason in my head, the 2020 negotiations feels like it was 1,000 years ago. 2.5 years will be here before we know it. And that's something that we all have to just keep remembering, that it's really close.
Yeah. And as a reminder, I love what you said, Jason, and everybody, but I love what you said because I do have to remind everybody, and this is nonpartisan, our lawyers, SAG lawyers, SAG NegCom, they are working for us. Nobody on our side is trying to screw over other people on our side, regardless of political party. People might have opinions about how to vote, whatever. But in the negotiation room, they're trying to push every goalpost forward that they can, so everyone is getting as many progress points as possible towards as much as we can freaking get during this monumentous time of power of show of power we've ever had, in my opinion. So just remember, these people and the lawyers, this is what they're trying to do for you.
And just to extend your point, of course, we are you. We work for you, but and so no one on our side is trying to screw anybody. But I also, and this is their goal, the producer's goal is not to screw you. Their goal is to save as much money as possible when they produce these movies. And screwing you happens to be the most expedient way to do that. I just make that point to underscore the fact that if, I mean, remember they made a whole hullabaloo at the live action Lion King, and everybody saw it and was just like, ah, you know what I mean? It was like, it's a big cartoon. It wasn't actual animals anywhere. It's all CGI. It's not live action. And it was a big underwhelming thing. Picture that, but with human beings. Their goal, somebody will try it, but I think the actual audience reaction, they'll try and see if they can save money, and I think there will be a rebellion from the audience, from us, and then they'll realize that it actually loses money and it's not worthwhile.
Yeah,
and keep in mind, guys, I just want you to keep in mind, there was nothing. If we go back to the 2020 contract and look at it, there's nothing for AI. It's the wild, wild west, and we don't have any control. So what we did was get as far as we could and to a point that we felt safe enough for the next 2.5 years. Because we weren't, I mean, that is one of the things, the very last night before the day that we had the tentative agreement, that we were saying, we can't walk out without this. We cannot do it. And when you wonder, because I've skimming the chat, not reading it, can't do that and listen to everything. But when you wonder, well, I can't. I'm like Natalia, I've got to focus so I can listen to everybody. But what this has done, this historic strike, that hasn't happened since 1960 with us and WGA on the line, it's created a solidarity and a community between us and them, and all of us together. This is the highest level. I've been in this union since the 90s, and this is the highest level of engagement I have ever seen. And while it can be a little daunting in the moment of this strike conversation or this contract conversation, it's beautiful, because that means hopefully if even a small percentage of the people that are engaging right now start to get educated on these contracts and how our negotiations work, then we will continue to have more and more power when we go into negotiations. We will continue to be a united union to go in and negotiate stronger than we were before. And I point blank asked our head negotiators, if we don't get these things that we called the respect package in the room, which we can talk about later, if we don't get those, do we have the power next time? And he point blank looked at me and said, if this union stays as united as it is, he said, oh yeah, and I can't wait for that. So keep in mind, this is what's getting us there, this engagement.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to the next person, and a reminder to everybody, if compensation and consent is required and enough of us say no and demand other things, we will still retain that power or not. It's up to you. This solidarity is amazing, and I thank you guys all for being here right now. Miraliza, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, you want me muting?
Yes, hi. So I'm a captain at Disney and Paramount, and I'm asking a question for, thanks, for a picketer, and this may sound, how do I phrase this? So I'm assuming, because we have legal at SAG-AFTRA, that this contract was, it's two-part, advised by someone specialized in AI, and then why didn't we start, and Duncan kind of said this at the Palladium, at no AI, no scanning, and if we, because this person has sent me a lot of videos, if we didn't, why did we give in, which again, this is someone asking, why did we give in and not use this as a leverage to continue holding out for no AI scanning? If that didn't, if I
kind of made
it out.
And I think here's the thing, there's, in any negotiation, there's an art to negotiation, right? There is at the point of leverage that we have, and that there's a point of leverage. Do we know, unless we have a crystal ball, where that point of leverage is? No, it's all based on what's happening and where we're talking and what is happening outside, right? Like there's so many factors in that with the point of leverage. Why no AI? I mean, as much as we would love to stay purist in that, what has been happening right now, and I have many friends that have been scanned for many Marvel films and other films already. And what was happening before is that those actors were never nobody knows where those scans are right now. Nobody knows what they were going to use it for. They were already going to use that. Why no AI is because we can't actually legally stop anybody from using that. Like this is, I know, not the same thing, but I'm just giving a simpler example in this is I can't go to you and say, Marilisa, you can't eat this brand of bread. Like you're going to tell me like, no, Natalia, I want to eat that brand of bread. That's what I'm going to do. I know that's very simplistic, but just to put it in that way, legally, we can't actually go there. So our negotiation was never going to be about like demanding no AI. It was always about how can we harness it, protect our members, so that we are prepared for what they're going to do. Because if we say, let's just say we could do that and we have a stance in the no AI, what are they going to do? They're going to go to other offshore countries that don't have any union protections and shoot their own shows and films there and then just, put them up on their platforms. Like we see how they buy, like Netflix buys a bunch of shows from non-signatory companies and they put it on and we're watching them, right? So I think that was the biggest thing in that aspect. And, as we tried to do, get as much protection for theirs. So at least we as artists have choices and we can say and demand what we allow them to do with these digital replicas or not. If anybody else wants to fill in, please.
I absolutely do.
Thank you, Kevin.
I'm not going to say this is mind-blowing, David. I don't want to go that far. But has everybody can you just, not necessarily today, just do it over the rest of the weekend. Actually stop. Taking a walk, going on a hike, and I want you to think about if we said human only, no scans, blank page on the AI proposal in our contract at this moment in time. Just ask yourself, what would they then do? Natalia just addressed part of it. They have been scanning people who don't have union protection on US-based foreign shot productions for 5 years. And if we had done that, we would have ended background in a much shorter period of time, number one. Number two, the number of foreign productions would increase because they would just pay to send the 2 stars or 3 stars over there, and that's it. However, go further in your brain. What would happen here in the US for productions who didn't want to spend the money to go all the way overseas with stars? Just stop and think about it. And let me share with you, since we on the NegCom have all faced a lot of extraordinary, extreme, really scary things. And I'm not telling you that I'm not uncomfortable. I am. I'm not telling you that this isn't disconcerting. It is. But I am sharing with you the following. When you put provisions, for as good as these are, actually in place, what you actually are able to create is the possibility for arbitration, the possibility to gain winning something. If you have a blank page, then the possibility for doing that doesn't exist because there's no premise or existing language. And what would likely happen is the following. And I know everybody understands this. I just want to make sure I say it out loud. This is not about changing your mind. It's about giving you something else to ponder. What likely might occur, since Tyler Perry has already basically set up Hollywood East in Georgia, which, by the way, is a right-to-work state where I started my career, because I'm a Tennessee boy. What you would likely see over the course of the next 2.5 years is every single A-list actor go FICOR. They would set up some cheesy little residence in either Texas or Georgia. And every single production because they can negotiate their own compensation, their own consent. Their agents at CAA and William Morris Endeavor can put every single protection around them that we wouldn't have. And they could go there and they could shoot every single production as non-union. And the only people who would make any money would be the A-list people at this moment. Now, if you think to yourself in your mind, that sounds absurd, Kevin, that sounds crazy, Kevin, that goes too far. That's what a lot of the things sound like from some of the stuff I've heard for the last 10 days. It doesn't mean this isn't scary. It doesn't mean there aren't going to be claims and lawsuits and all that stuff, because unfortunately, guys, that's part of burning new land, breaking new ground. A lot more planes crashed 35 years ago than they do today. A lot more cars crashed. This is reality.
Downer, Kev, downer.
Because if we're going to say this is an existential threat to our careers, that means you're erasing someone, period, for life. And you have to use the evolution. Okay, I'll just say that doctors used to smoke. How about that? I'm sure there are some that still do. But the point is that time and a lot of effort, if we all stay this engaged and make this much effort, I want to make sure everybody also understands something today that has not been mentioned. One of the great things coming, we say 2.5 years, hang on a second. We have a commercial contract negotiation coming up that is 15 months sooner than when ours ends. And last I checked, there are day players, there are principals, there are non-stars, and there are stars in our commercials. So every single thing that we just did will help that negotiation, and we can actually help that commercial negotiation 15 months ahead of our next theatrical actually improve those AI terms before we even get to our theatrical, and then we can use those for our theatrical. None of that makes this perfect, but I'm just going to beg everybody here to stop looking perfect, and the A-listers can actually do us a lot more harm than you may have think about in terms of if we had a blank page and no AI.
I'm calling somebody up really fast to address that, if it's okay, Marilisa, just because in addition to that, there's been a lot of concern about stunts and replacing with AI and all of that. This will be a very quick statement and an address from a friend of mine who is an Emmy-nominated stuntman here, John Nania, who needs to unmute himself. Just really fast, can you just address that, what they're talking about with that, please?
You and I have talked a lot, and I think this is just worth mentioning. You asked me to come and comment on this because for the past 18 years, this is something I deal with pretty much every other day, especially with Marvel, DC, the bigger films. There's a lot of confusion on what is AI and like this new thing. No, a lot of the stuff that people are talking about isn't new. I've been scanned, I don't know how many times for a Marvel project. I'm very fortunate. I get to double Sebastian Stan as the Winter Soldier. Yeah, I need to be scanned because there are certain things we physically and even through stunts can't do. Iron Man does not actually fly through the air. There is not a stunt guy. There are moments that we put them on things, and I won't go into the whole process of it where he's there, but that's all computer generated. That's all a digi-double. It is not AI. All of this stuff, even as a stunt performer, and people are like, well, yes, the way that this is worded in the contract, it is going to cost other stunt people jobs. Minimally. Because we're not there. It's not there. You can't come up with all of this stuff. You might have an AI version of Keanu Reeves. I got news for you. That AI has no idea how bad his right shoulder is and how bad his left knee is. So they're not going to be able to have the same body language. It is very hard. When you talk about AI, is it going to be somebody in the background? Great, do that. Watch Avengers Endgame. There's 400 of me in the background as a Kree soldier. I don't care. I don't mind. I was on a contract on this. We knew what it was being used for. There's other times that it has been taken advantage. I mean, it will, but these are first steps to give us protections. We need to understand what AI is, and then also what's been done in the past. Now, they're still going to scan you, and they scan you. Hey, great. Now, if you get scanned, you have a chance to get a bump. That never happened before, and they were doing a lot of it. AI would actually be like, great, you have this. And Jason, you actually put this really elegantly. Thank you. You have, I always just like to use him as an example, like George Clooney. Great. It's not going to necessarily have his personality, his mannerisms, his movements. I mentioned Keanu and his bad shoulder and his bad knee. Those are things that the computer's not just going to pick up on it. Yes, we have things like deep fakes, but you still have to do that. One of the bigger concerns and where this is probably going to get even more utilized in stunts is they're probably going to digitally map Sebastian, give him a pay bump. And then guess what? For the whole fight, that digital map goes right over me because it's still a lot of things that the computer can't do. We deal with this when we shoot our previses. We actually add in all the effects and we talk to the effects departments. So with the AI, it is important to remember that the technology is not there. It is not going to steal your identity. There are things, the fact that we have anything put in place now is huge because in 2.5 years, even if there's a massive step forward in the technology that goes with it, great. We have grounds to actually talk about it. We didn't give anything up. We didn't sit there. These are things that have been happening for decades. And it's great that there's now actually things that are in there because the technology finally has gotten a little more like, well, hold on, people are having conversations. Again, with the whole thing in GBT, go write a script. It's not good. You want to get to a human emotional performance of an actor or a stunt performer. It's not there yet. So that's just a little quick clarification. I didn't want to take up too much time, but this is something.
Thank you, Matt. No, I appreciate it because you're right. It's not like it's going to be used; it's being used, and this is the contract to start regulating it. I guess
And you're recording this, David, right?
Yes, we're recording this. We're going to put it up shortly after once we can.
Because I just wanted to ask this question. I appreciate it because I'm going to send it to my friend who asked it.
You're the question you just asked?
Yeah, that wasn't for me. I'm a yes. So I was asking for a
You're all good. God bless you. Thank you so much. Very much appreciate it. We're going to go to the next one, which is the yes.
One last point on that on the why we allowed that we had AI. I as somebody who tries to be an artist, tries to pursue art, I don't want to deny another artist tools. It'd be like, if we prohibited any use of CGI or performance capture because it was scary, then there's no Avatar. And whether you like the movie or not, you can't deny that it's amazing and it's amazingly visually and that sort of thing. So that was the piece. So the conversation was always about, for all the reasons that were stated before, but also from an artistic standpoint, how do I make sure that the tools for their craft, the new tools for their craft, respects my craft? And that's just, I think, a point worth making.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Allie, you were muted and not on camera, but either way, you're called up.
Me? I'm here?
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, guys. Hi. So I want to jump Shell's question. I want to jump in just real quick to the voiceover side of it, and heard everything you guys said. So I just want to dive right in. I feel like some VO people are pretty concerned knowing that our animated television contracts can't be negotiated. I talked to Bob Bergen earlier this week about, I know they're working on putting that team together and we can't even move forward with negotiating that half until this is ratified. But I think VO people are feeling really lost. And I don't just mean looping. I know that was addressed at the Palladium the other night. They're feeling like even the self-tape and audition provisions, we're not seeing anything about mic setups and sound setups and the expectation of paying for Source Connect and having any other additional VO specific stuff going on. So that's my first question. Just I'm looking for just a finger on the pulse from you guys that were in the space negotiating of the awareness of that stuff and the awareness of voice being further along technologically and passing than digital replicas, because I fully understand we're far from this working the way we're afraid it's working, but it does happen in VO already. And even though we have voice banks and stuff, I can't whistle. Somebody else is whistling in an animation every time I can. So it already exists. So I'm just curious about the finger on the pulse on that. And then my follow-up question is, I know Duncan answered it at the Palladium about the contract language of not getting an actor identified as human. I'm hoping someone will clarify it, especially after David Slack's post recently, because I was under the impression Duncan specifically said that DGA and WGA, that was necessary for legality to matter and have consequence, but it doesn't apply to us because we don't have minimums. I'm hoping someone will truncate that so that I can pass that on to other people, because that seems to be the current big fight.
Great. Well, I'm one of I do a lot of looping. I do a lot of dubbing. I get affected with a lot of this stuff, right? That is, and we had other people in the NegCom that do the same, right? So voiceover was very much in the forefront of all of this. your question about, so you got the answer obviously for looping in with Duncan, and we're A-okay in that aspect, right? Digital replica would still be considered. I know dubbing and voice matching is one of the things that, is in the forefront of our community. And as far as somebody who does a ton of looping, voice matching and dubbing, I understand what that would be. So there's a couple things, and, I like to think of in the protections for AI, for specifically for voiceover, is original performance and secondary performance. I look at it that way so that we can understand it, I think, a little bit better. So in dubbing, we are actually, as the dubbing actors, we're actually the secondary performers, right? Because we work off of the original performers on screen, what they do, to then match them. Right now, in this moment in time, Flawless is the company that can really do a really great job in switching your mouth movements so that it fits to what the new language is going to be, per se, right? And so for Flawless would have to get, like, if they want to use Flawless on you, let's say if you're an on-camera actor, they have to get your consent to be able to do that anyway, first of all, right? First and foremost. Secondly, right now the tech for changing the language from English to Spanish or to Japanese or to Russian, can it be done? Yes, but it's not there yet in the sense of regionalism, right? So when I watch a film in my home country of Colombia and Venezuela, it's not the same how Americans act. I even have this issue when I'm doing things in English where I hit different words because that's how I grew up speaking. And the American person's like, oh, can you actually emphasize that word? Right. And that's just a thing. So those little tiny changes and differences aren't there yet. So do I think at this moment in time and in the next 2.5 years, will it for sure go away? No, I think we still have a little bit of runway in that aspect. Can the tech get better? 100%. And I know when the tech gets better, that's maybe possibly one of those jobs that the secondary performance is kind of hard to protect, because as a union in general, a union can never say to one actor or another, you can work, but you can't, right? We just, as a union, they can't do that. So it's about protecting all members. So hopefully what I would love, and Jason mentioned this on the on-camera side, is that when our on-camera performers are celebrities, because there's a lot of celebrities, let's just be honest, that do not like doing any of their ADR, do not like to come in and do efforts that we do, or breaths, or any of that kind of stuff. Hopefully they can also include that in their contracts, Allie, where it's like, no, I'm not going to give you the consent for this. And realize that is another actor. But I think that's about education, because some of them don't actually know. I voice matched actors that don't actually know I'm doing it for them.
that part. I do an entire series that is originally a celebrity from a movie, right? So like it's that less like looping and more like, I don't know if they're aware that it would take a job. So that's why I was wondering, like, as somebody who doesn't hang out with celebrities, except for myself, like that's my finger on the pulse. I'm wondering about in terms of like ways to like I kind of just want to be prepared.
Yeah.
Like, if they are actually not aware and won't be.
For sure, Allie, and I agree with you. And I think, for me, it's all about, I like to say education, but I think it's also knowledge and letting our A-listers and our celebrities really truly understand, because sometimes I don't feel like they do understand, and it's not for anything. It's just, right? Like, we're working maybe up, and maybe they got lucky and they went up and they didn't know the steps to get there. So I think, could voice matching go away in dubbing? Sure, right? Because we can't tell the I don't know, Viola Davis, hey, Viola, you can't use your own voice to fix something, unfortunately. But that does not affect looping. Looping, I consider in the original performance, because background of every scene is still there. So You know, hopefully that helps, Allie. You know, I've had to kind of grieve and kind of, you know, really see the reality, but I will tell you that
Totally.
do everything in my power, and I would love for everybody else to do that, is educate those celebrities that you know, and let them know that there are other actors that have been doing these works, and hopefully we can all work together as you know, in solidarity like we have been.
Let's be honest. Like that thing, this solidarity movement right now that everybody has, if one thing that we can force to happen from this is that we all educate and outreach to each other so we are aware of what happens, we will not only put out so many fires before they happen, but we will be able to fix our contracts and our jobs moving forward. Like, it really is about, you have to, as an actor, go, let me figure this all out and talk about it.
And once again, Scarlett Johansson, if, you know, when something is filed, when something is done and we win and somebody wins, you know, a suit, this is going to temper some of the bullshit that will be obviously done by others. So let's keep that in mind.
Thank you very much, Allie.
I love these folks. No, I want to bring up, there's another part of VO that is not talked about in our industry that is going to be a lot more jobs. And the AMPTP doesn't want to acknowledge it. We believe fully that it is covered by our contract, and that is audio description. And I work on both of Jason's shows doing audio description for Grey's and 19, and amongst other things. And it is a primary performance, right? So I can't guarantee what's going to happen when they accept it and dub it into other language. But that is another part of VO that they can't touch with AI. They can't do it at the moment. I mean, life is going to change. We had horse and buggy, now we have cars. So, and the first flying car was, anyway, that's, my nerd is showing. But so that's out there, and we are, you know, they're saying it's not covered. We're saying it is covered, and we have avenues that we're going through right now to make sure that is covered work with pension and health and residuals and all that. And once, I can go long and I won't, but with audio description is federally mandated work. So while it is not every single project is described right now, they will be, because the law, and that is a lot of VO jobs that will be opening up. I mean, just a lot. And there are performers with disabilities going, oh my God, then all the other people are going to want to do audio description. Yeah, you know, they are, but I hope that elevates the craft, elevates the art, and makes the project more entertaining for the people who need or who choose to consume audio description work as well. So that's something we're also working very hard on for VO.
And
what exactly is audio description?
Oh, do you need me to explain that, Jason? All right. For anyone who has blind or low vision family or friends, you already know this. If you like to watch TV in your car, you already know this. Hopefully you're not watching it on a screen. Audio description is a actor. Hopefully they do use some tech, and people have been complaining, so Fox stopped using it immediately. That tells you what is happening. And I sorry, Jace, it's not your episode, but one line I've never forgotten that I've done on Grey's is in slow, and I'm not going to perform it for you now, but in slow motion, Dr. Hayes rushes into Farouk's OR. You're not going to know that if you are sitting there not being able to see the screen. So we are providing not stage direction, but action. We never say he looks at her longingly. No, we don't say that. We describe the facial expression, and then you can visualize that and determine what you believe that means. But if you've been on Shondaland, and I see Brooke Smith in the room, if you've been on Shondaland or watched Shondaland, you know the music montages, and those audiences are like, I don't know what's happening. What's happening? So that is what audio description is. It's providing the ability for our audiences to understand what's happening without seeing the screen if they can't.
Allie, I know you asked the other question about the human description, and you know, Duncan gave such a great answer at the Palladium, you know, and that's on the legality aspect of going back to how we can arbitrate and like take people, you know, on these claims and everything. If we, as great as it would be in our personal contract, you know, there is a section, I think it's like the first section, that kind of describes what a performer is, and then it kind of goes down to saying that it is a human. I think it's like section 1. Okay, no, I can't remember the actual number, but it's like at the beginning of the CBA, sorry. But if you actually put it like, quote unquote, pigeonhole it and just say an actor is a human being, what that does is that is a huge loophole for our digital replicas. And then we don't have protections under the law to be able to, go after them if they misuse it, because they're like, well, it's not a human, it's not an actor, and we don't want that. So, there's a lot of things, and I'll just say this is just a blanket statement, but there's a lot of things that in the contract, they might seem open or for interpretation and all of that, but that is part of the law, because if when we have them open to interpretation, we have better chances to win a lot of these claims and a lot of these things that are there, and our lawyers will love to take them to court, if we have to. So just remember, the legal language, I know it sometimes you're like, why? It's because of that, because in the court of law, that is where it would protect us, not necessarily in our own little house.
Thank you for that. I think that actually answers a lot of people's questions I've heard lately about, like, how can we trust them not to screw us here or do their usual thing here? It's kind of nice to think sometimes it really goes in our benefit to be able to say, wait, it violates because of this reason. That's really interesting. Yeah. Thank you, Ali. Thank you so much for your question. Torian, if I'm pronouncing your name right, I hope I am.
Totally correct. Thank you.
Woo-hoo!
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
This is a great segue, actually, because I was hoping we could elaborate a bit more on what our efforts are in the legislative space, because I'm in total agreement that we kind of got everything we could get with the time that we had. And even knowing that it might not be sufficient, I think there's a lot of focus we need to pay attention to what our government can do for us. This technology is very much consumer facing. Anybody with a computer could put any one of us at risk, our minor performers at risk. And so I'm just really curious about what we're doing so that our contract can have a little more teeth from the top.
It's funny because actually I see Stacey Travis on here. I mentioned right of publicity before, and Stacey Travis is actually the chair of our Government and Public Policy Committee at SAG-AFTRA. And as SAG-AFTRA has been working on right of publicity. And for what you don't know, that's when and this is one of the things, you may have heard of the Supreme Court case that said that AI you can't copyright a script written by AI, right? And that is a huge boon to writers everywhere, because now a writer or a human being has to be involved. And so those kind of things dovetail into each other. There is nothing that says that we automatically own our image and likeness. That doesn't exist in the world. And we've been fighting for decades for right of publicity. There are good ones in California. There are several other states that have good right of publicity laws and that sort of thing. I wonder if we can unmute Stacey Travis for a second and she could comment on that further.
And before Stacey comes on, we have a really amazing lawyer, Jeffrey Bennett, on staff, who that is pretty much what he does. And, he deals with going to Washington and all of that. And here in California and everything, to really try to make these protections on the federal level.
Stacey?
Yes. Hi. Sorry, I'm Saturday morning. I wasn't going to be on camera. I won't go into the wonkiness of right of protection at this moment, though Jason did a great overview. I just want to say that we've been working on this for quite a while, because yes, as you mentioned, Jeffrey Bennett and our GAP staff, government affairs staff, we've always been really into copyright law and the ways in which we protect performers, going back to protecting children, but really going back to protecting state by state when a performer passes. And there are very good, tough laws in Vermont, New York, and California, thanks to our legislative efforts. There are many states that, unfortunately, you can have a fantastic plan and you die in the wrong state and then you're not protected. So we're still trying to get all that done on a federal level. When it comes to AI and just using your image in ways that you don't agree, we can't rely on what I just like to call studio math, right? In that they just ignore what is in our CBA and they just choose to let us file claims or sue them until they have to do it. So if they think that all of the 16 pages of AI protections that we got, they're just going to kind of ignore them, we want federal and state laws in place to avoid that exact thing. So I just want to let everybody know on here, we have a bipartisan bill in the Senate that came out 3 weeks ago, and it will probably, fingers crossed, because of the Senate makeup, we're probably going to get that passed. Now, when it goes to the House, that's a shit show, but we're dropping a bill in the House called the No Fakes Act. It was supposed to drop Wednesday this week. The sponsor didn't write it in time. That's actually coming out next week, I think, with Thanksgiving. That could be the following. But just know in the next 10 days, that No Fakes Act is coming out. Okay. Then we have California legislation that we already dropped, and that is coming out in January in 2 months. And we're going to get that passed no matter what. We're going to get Newsom to sign that. So in California, when you work, we're going to have really strong protections. And we're already far along in the New York legislature. So those are 2 big states that we are going to have state protections and federal protections around AI. So then if we have to file a claim or sue, it becomes a whole other ball game if Warner Brothers or Disney studios that are want to just say, fuck you, I'm going to ignore it. Excuse my language. I'm so sorry. I forgot we're recording. If they just say, we're going to ignore you, they can't. If you're going to stick an actual state or federal law on them, that has real powerful teeth. It's not just 160,000 union members. It's the state or federal government. So I don't want to talk more, but I just want to let you guys know we have all these laws in place ready to go, and we fully intend to fight until we get them passed.
Real quick, Stacey, can you rename those 3? Because I think people were trying to jot them down. Just rename the 3.
I tell you what, give me a second to get the proper names.
Put them in the chat.
I'll stick them in the chat. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for the question there. We will move on to Ruth, I believe.
Yes. Hi, everyone.
Wow.
Thank you for your work on our behalves. So I wrote down my question in the chat, so I'm just going to read it. My question has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion concerns. So since digital alterations allow on-camera performers to seem to speak other languages, as Natalia was talking about, and skin color can be altered and features can be altered, how might this impact our diversity, equity, and inclusion imperatives? What questions are being asked? What questions should we be asking? What concerns do we foresee in this space?
You're talking about the AI space, right, Ruth?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, going back to the 2 different I keep separating AI because I just want to make sure that we all have the separation, meaning, you know, your digital replica and the synthetic fake performer, right? So just so that we're always clear that there's the 2. And when I say synthetic fake, you're going to see it in the summary as synthetic performer. I don't like to call them a performer because I don't call them a performer. They're a fake. You know, in your digital replica, again, it is you. It is exactly you. So they can't be like all of a sudden changing my olive skin tone to be something else, to match something else, right? I think where you're talking, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Ruth, is in the synthetic fake, correct?
Yes, I think my concern is that a worry about going back to the eras of white actors and brown faces, right? You know, just to put it really bluntly, like who gets hired, right? To make sure that we're really having these protections, so equitably diverse casting.
Well, I think the short version is, and by the way, I'm also the chair of the Diversity Advisory Committee, which is kind of the United Nations of all the protected classes and committees that we have in the union. They come together and trade best practices and support each other's efforts and yada, yada, yada. The short answer is, you want to change my skin color, you got to get my consent. And hell no, that's not happening. So that I think it's pretty simple. I mean, and they have to tell you that that's one of their intentions. If, and so, I mean, look, you can't stop Michael Jackson from lightening his skin or what have you, so if somebody wants them to change things about them, then they will. But again, going back to, like I talked about the 3 ways, there's the contract, there's, law, and then there's actual realities of the business. Realities of the business, if, like Kate Winslet famously went off on, I believe it was Vanity Fair, because they slimmed her down in a photo shoot. And she was like, no, you don't do that to me. And she was so the blowback. So again, the consent piece is massive in that. And so you won't be taking performers who are people of color and changing their skin tone without them saying so, without their consent, in which case, hey, I can't stop you from being a problem to yourself and hating yourself. I think that's sort of the short version.
Yeah, and then I was just going to say on the synthetic fakes, right, aspect where we're generating a bunch and you're just putting in a prompt, kind of like in ChatGPT, that you put a prompt and it pops up. Like right now, if you go to Google, I think, and you put kind nurse or something like that. It has those that issue, Ruth, that we're all talking about and what we worry about, right? Because it just shows a particular type of nurse, and it might not even put a different gender in there because for whatever reason, that's what Google has seen. And I think that's part of the overseeing on the synthetics, right? Yep. As far as really truly trying to monitor, how are you prompting this? What are you doing? This is becoming an issue in the diversity and the inclusion and all of that. But that's on the synthetic generative AI piece that they do have to alert the union every time they do it. And that's how I think we can start controlling that aspect. What Jason was talking about is the digital double, our digital replica, which is our own, and that's where you have to give consent. So hopefully that kind of helps, Ruth. And, as a Latina and somebody, a lot of us that are, people of color, like trust me, I fight tooth and nail as well as everybody that's here of the NegCom for those issues, because I agree, they shouldn't be just one type.
And I need to add in, well, first of all, this is what Lebanese looks like. Okay. Our industry doesn't even know that. Our industry thinks we look like people from India, which are beautiful people, but they're not what my family looks like. So, there's that bias that we talk about with the generative AI, but also I'm a member of the Performers with Disabilities community. I am chair of one of our PWD committees at the moment. We have been fighting this for a long time because with CGI, with in post with visual effects, they have been making non-disabled performers look disabled. And we are, and here comes my math, we're 25% of the population, people with disabilities. And we don't care what ethnicity, what gender, we don't care nothing. We will accept you because you might join us and we hope you don't, but we'll love you if you do. But we are 25% of the population. We are 3% of scripted characters. Of that 3%, only 1 to maybe 2% of that 3 as a whole are played by disabled actors. That means 0.06% of actors are working disabled. So we have been fighting that VFX thing for a very long time. And we're about to do, once this is all settled, because we got to wait, we're going to do a campaign to show the producers that it is actually not cost effective to remove a limb when you could just hire somebody without the limb. It is not, and I'll give you another number. I won't say his name, but he's a wonderful actor, was on a show playing a man in a wheelchair, series reg, not a man in a wheelchair. It cost approximately $30,000 an episode to make his legs not move in post-production. It is, yeah. I have a friend who was the guy who did it, so that's how I know the number. Because it's about $3,000 to $5,000 per every 5 seconds. So it is not cost effective to do that. It is more cost effective to hire us. Yes, there might be, like we have on our Bitmojis and whatever, change skin color like that. That, as Jason says, we can't help people from getting themselves in trouble and, in that way. But we are fighting that in various different ways, and performers with disabilities are very used to this fight.
To be clear, Ruth is going to ask a second question, not because we're just randomly allowing somebody to ask a second question. Somebody else was in line and got kicked off. So people who are waiting, this is just that person who was kicked off's question. Sorry, Jason, go ahead.
Well, no, before we hit that, I just wanted to, since you brought up a general equity and inclusion question, one of the producers asks of us that, and by the way, we always say no first, just like they always say no to us, but this is one that we secretly were ecstatic for them to give them, was to get rid of what is called the casting data report. Literally, that's where usually a PA sits on set and tries to eyeball who looks like they have a disability, who looks like they're of what ethnicity, who looks like, so it's literally a PA just guessing and trying to eyeball it. And it was ridiculous, but it was the best we could do in the 1980s or 70s or whenever the hell the thing started. And it's always been problematic for a number of reasons that I think are obvious. What we are doing instead, and why we were so happy to get rid of it and use it as a give to them, even though we actually would have eventually asked for it probably to ourselves, is we are doing a demographic profile self-identification campaign within ourselves. Everyone within the sound of my voice should log into their account on the SAG-AFTRA website and fill out your demographic profile. And so you can to give a complete and utter detailed self-identification, your real age, your real ethnicity, whether you're a member of the ADA community, et cetera, et cetera. And the beauty is It's completely in-house. It's our people. It's thoroughly confidential. So the whole idea is, I have friends who are Israeli, but they can play anyone in the Middle East. They don't want you to know that they're Israeli, because then they will never get hired for any of the Middle Eastern roles, et cetera, et cetera. So you can, it's not who you are, it's what you can play. So because it's in-house, your name is removed. Our staff, by and large, will not even know who these are. It's only the information that comes out of it really for our staff is your pronouns, so they can better refer to you as you wish. So the idea is that your SAG ID number, your SAG-AFTRA ID number, would then be linked up to the profile. And the beauty is, if we get this done at the level that we want to get it done, if we can get the vast majority or even a significant portion of our membership to do this, we will have the most comprehensive database in the industry, more than the Gina David Institute, the Annenberg Institute, all do phenomenal work. But ultimately, they're counting the same way we are, whereas we will be self-identifying, getting real numbers. So we'll know exactly how many fewer Latinos are being hired in guest star roles, exactly how many women are few, exactly how few PWDs, performers with disabilities, are working, and we'll know who's earning what because it's connected. And again, completely disconnected from your name, so it completely protects your privacy, and it's all done inside of the computer, but we'll have real data to be in. That's the ammunition we need to go to the negotiating table and say, by the way, on an inclusion tip, you're garbage, you're trash, and we have receipts to back it up. Here you go. So please spread the word to friends, on the website, fill out your demographic profile, self-identification.
That is absolutely amazing.
David, you need to know, I want everybody to know this, because we have been fighting as PWDs for 45 years to be included on CDR, and we haven't. This will be the first time we're included. This is the height of the moment for us, is we are included on the list.
And it'll capture all of the invisible ones, like hearing loss. You're not fully deaf, but you are hearing. You are hard of hearing. Neurodivergence. All of those things will get captured by this, because you're identifying yourself, knowing that it's the safety of you're only telling your people, and your name will never be attached to it in any outgoing way. So please.
I love that so much. Thank you. Real fast, just to clarify. So Ruth can ask the other person's question. Jonathan has a question. Angel has a question. If any NegCom can stay, we're technically a little bit over. Please do. If you can, if you have to run, I totally understand it. And then side note to everybody out there, in case anybody's just going to pop off, this was just planned because we decided we wanted to provide this opportunity. And as I have said in chat, we're down to try to organize more if people are into it and enjoying this, assuming we can get other NegCom to come and we haven't scared people away. If it interests you, we're going to put this up online. It's being recorded for other people to watch later to help answer their questions. And please spread the word, so that way maybe we will do another one. And I will shut up now and say, Ruth, what was your friend's question?
I'll just add one thing, sorry, to what David said. Wherever you saw this online, whether it was one of our Instagram posts, someone else, we're going to be setting the replay in those same locations. So if you saw this in a Facebook group originally, we'll be posting the replay there. So you should be able to find the replay, and any future ones that we do, we will post in the same locations too.
Yes. And so thank you. And Ruth, what was your friend's question who got disconnected?
Yes, I just wanted to say first, I was very happy to hear about the new data collection and analysis processes that is going to happen at the union about diversity, and I hope that information is going to be transparent to the membership itself. So I'm assuming it will be made accessible to us and not just stay within the union. So I don't know if that's a question, it's a statement, it's a hope. I don't know if that's already answered and we know.
Sorry.
You mean as members?
As members, is that information going to be made and accessible?
Well,
for what purpose?
Confidential, meaning we're never going to, they would never release me your data. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just meant it's as a final analysis,
You mean the aggregate numbers?
Yes, as the results of the analysis. Yes.
Oh, trust. I mean, like we said, the Natalia, the Latinos Caucus, the PWDs, the EEO, our new MENA, Middle East and North Africa, trust that these committees are all chomping at the bit for this information, so they can then say, when I come to kick your ass, I got receipts, and I can prove that it's not there. And it's amazing how deep it goes, by the way, because I had look on our show, I tell the ADs, I'm like, I need the background to be full diverse, and we make that happen on the shows. But one of my ADs actually once on a show, just kind of as an experiment, actually made sure that all of the background, 50% of the background was women. And the response from one of the producers was, holy cow, there's a lot of women. What's going on? And just literally visually, it felt wrong to him.
Yeah.
And we need the receipts to back it up. And so this is, trust, it will not be quiet when it's done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm in the EEOC committees. So yes, I'm looking forward to having this information. Absolutely. So now I'll ask my friend's question, Vivian. She's asking, when lip movement is altered, so it seems performers can speak other languages, is the voice work contractually protected? So it must be human and voiced by local union talent, or is this voice open to being AI generated? And if so, and if AI generated, then it is human trained AI, right? So there's a human somewhere, potentially a human union member who might have been not be compensated for their work in training the AI. I guess, how far does it go, right? That we're tracking that it is human, that it's union, that it's paid, that there's wages being paid.
Sure. So Ruth, Vivian, through Ruth, I'm guessing that goes back to the dubbing question that Ali, that we talked to with Ali, right? Because that's kind of where that would happen. So just to kind of, again, go through it, I'll try to truncate it because I'm sorry, I'm very long-winded. I can't help it. Stop it, Kevin and Nicole.
Also, we're all actors. I think, yeah.
No, I don't do it on purpose, trust me. But so with that, as far as if you're talking about a synthetic, synthetically created, generated AI voice, that has to be notified to the union, right? And that is where our committee, our standing committee, which is the negotiating committee, who becomes the standing committee after we ratify, after the ratification process, we would charge an immense amount of money for them not to be able to use a synthetic performer / synthetic fake, so that it incentivizes it to go to a human performer, right? Or a digital double, which is if I'm on camera and it is my, for example, when I was on Bosch, they had my entire scenes and, show moved to Spain, and they had a bunch of Spanish actors, doing my voice in Spanish. I didn't have say at that point to be like, nope, I want to do it or whatever, you could put that in the contract, but they had actual humans. A lot of the dubbing, because this kind of goes to dubbing, Ruth, is the English, and right now, any production that is done here in the States is protected for the Spanish under the Netflix agreement, meaning that those are all union jobs. Other languages, French, Japanese, German, Russian, all of that, those are actually not done here in the States. They actually, the dubbing houses here, they have dubbing houses in those countries, and they use whatever performers there. So that's stuff that is not in our jurisdiction, the other languages in that aspect. Spanish and English is for dubbing. So that's where I think we have a lot more control in the sense of trying to get, because like I said, the technology right now for even adding the regionalisms and the isms of each individual country and culture isn't there yet in the technology. Can it translate? Sure. But I'm not going to connect with it because it doesn't have the same things as me in Venezuela as it would you here in the States. So that is where we try to, if it's the digital replica, you can't tell an actual on-camera performer, sorry, you can't use your own voice to hire this other person. That is the part that I mentioned that we really have to kind of educate our own members as far as trying to get them to, understand that it is another human's job, but they would get compensated if it was their voice. So on Bosch, if they dealt with me and they changed it in flawless, and I consented to that. And if I consented for them to use my voice, I would get compensated for that. As far as that, hopefully, does that kind of answer Vivian's question?
I think so. I mean,
if I can jump in just to give you a little, with audio description, you have to turn it on, right? It's under the accessibility stuff, and our voice is in between all the dialogue. And if I am not matching the tone of the scene, it jolts you out of your experience on the show. So another show, a friend of mine is on, they killed off one of their lead actors because they had a baby in real life and wanted to stay home and be a mom. So there was this scene where her husband, number one on the call sheet, is dreaming that she's still alive. The alarm goes off. He rolls over. She's not there. And what you heard was, he rolls over. Nick's not there. And it was horrifying. And so I called my friend on the show and he's like, wait, what? And he very adorable older man said, are you sure that's not just a really bad actor? I said, no. And literally within a month, Fox put down a decree that no show was allowed to use an AI voice as their audio description voiceover. So also the hope is it's not just us fighting. It's not just us in courts. It's also the audience needing to stand up and say, this sounds like shit for the time that it does. Right. And help say, we want real performance. We want that to be what we experience.
Thank you so much. Kevin has to take off. Thank you so much for your time, Kevin. Appreciate it. And apologize for, everybody taking your time. We have 2 more questions. And then again, we'll post this all later. Appreciate every single one of you. Jonathan, if you can unmute yourself and ask your patient question. God bless you.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I was actually going to direct this towards Kevin, but
I'm so sorry.
I'm worried that we're conflating a colloquial term of AI and artificial intelligence, and that language would get codified because digital replicas and synthetic performers are not necessarily the same as artificial intelligence because they can be human created, a CGI in that regard. When we talk about artificial intelligence, I'm worried that it's all computer only, and my loophole lawyer brain would easily tear that apart by saying, no, a human made this. And that would just throw everything that we're working here out the window.
Interesting point you make. And in fact, had this conversation a little bit after the big public forum the other night with one of our legal staff. And this is about the alterations made to our face. So this extends to the CGI, et cetera, et cetera. So in other words, it's far beyond just artificial intelligence. It's actually reaching into stuff that we've been using and dealing with as performers for decades. I remember watching Titanic and seeing, Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet running down as the wave of water is right behind them. And their face was kind of blurry at the edges all along. And I realized that Leonardo was suddenly a little more jacked up than he was. And I was like, oh, Leo, suddenly he got in the steak. Go ahead, man. So yes, this actually goes to your point. It's actually purposeful and it goes far beyond. It's not just artificial intelligence. It's about these things that create digital replicas. Digital replicas is beyond just artificial intelligence. To your point, our legal staff is way smarter than us and was on top of that and purposely made it broader than artificial intelligence.
Beautiful. Thank you, David. Can I ask one more question?
We have more protections than we used to, I guess is another way of saying it.
Yeah, and also just to piggyback on that, remember the summary is the length of the summary. The MOA is going to be way, way longer because they're pumping it full of all this language to try to make sure the definitions fit what is now and what may change later. Jonathan, it depends. What is your other question?
Well, we were sold on the interim agreement for a quarter of a year as it was a possibility that to prove that the AMPTP could work under those conditions. Yes. I am primarily right now New York background. We've been stagnant in about 3 to 4 contract negotiations. The only appreciable gains we've ever seen have been part of the interim agreement in terms of, lunch, meal penalties, wardrobe, things like that. And it all went out the window. And all New York, quote unquote, background feels is that we've received a wage increase that takes us to about 2017 wages and an extra $9 on formal wear. So I'm wondering what happened in the negotiation that removed most of those provisions, if not all, from background, from the interim agreement to the language we're going to put forth.
I think and if anybody's going to jump in, but I think the short version is negotiations happen. It's a battle. They hate having to do anything for background. It costs them not nearly, and the way they behave when we get into background conversations, you would honestly think that you were the most expensive thing in the entire contract. It makes us insane. And for several things that are like quality of life, we have been prepared to walk out. Now that said, New York also got the 11% bump and was it 4% bump in the second year?
Yeah,
so the
3.5 in the third.
Right. So the 15% over the course of the first year of the contract. So that's a pretty big bump that gets you up to, around cost of living. And then the other thing is the reason why New York has been stagnant for the last several cycles is because they're weighted down by everybody else. Now that everybody's caught up, now we can try and move everybody forward. So it literally finally fixed the sandbags and big anvil around your ankle has been released, and now we can actually start fighting for more for all of you at the same time.
Well, and
I appreciate that.
We also had a background expert, too, in the room in the committee that would know three. Wow, that would know much more than I think myself. So I won't try to tackle the exact details. Wait, where'd you go, David? Was it David?
Me?
No,
it was me. Hi,
Jonathan. He's still pinned.
Okay. But what they did not want, what I think you're seeing also in the interim agreement is the AMPTP did not agree to the single Schedule X. That was something that we were trying to fight to really get in this contract this time around. There are gains, of course, in the protections of AI for background and the raises that we talked about. As far as the meal penalties and all of that, look, we fought to the end. And this is not just for background, for everybody. This is what we call in our room the respect package. Part of the respect for all of us workers for the late pay and and the meal penalties and the breaks and all of this kind of stuff. And they did not even want to go anywhere near that, which is very unfortunate. It is not something that I will tell you for sure, Jonathan, that it is not something that we will ever give up on. We will continue in that, to get that. We tried to get, the best we could in the fact of even in the formal wear, because I know a lot of our background we're being charged a lot to clean their formal wear in dry cleaning, and that was very expensive. So we tried to get a bump in that aspect. But be assured, Jonathan, we won't let any of that stuff go in that respect package. And hopefully that really helps with that. And I'm not sure, because I don't know here if that comment is not a nice comment or what, but
yeah, don't look.
I just have to say something because it's very hard for me to stay quiet with certain things. We did not throw anybody under the bus. I really got to be sure everybody knows that. And I can't tell you how much that actually hurts when people say that, because we fought tooth and nail for everybody. And I cannot stay quiet when I see those kinds of comments. We worked this contract. We would never want to throw anybody under the bus. So I just have to say that because I can't with those comments. So if that was meant towards us, please
to be fair, well, first of all, I 100% agree with you, and everyone be kind. I think that was a misplaced joke, potentially quoting Seinfeld and or saying that that was the ANTPT's response to us. And not only do I think everyone in this chat who was here then, before, and soon does respect you, but anybody who is not welcome here or, as far as I'm concerned, in our union.
And I just want to say that wasn't, my apologies for misunderstanding. I've been getting so many of those kind of comments online.
You're good.
Why I've been off social media, but just know that we are wanting that respect package because we are all important and we are worth it. And
Yes.
we're very upset at the AMPTP for these things. So trust that we will continue fighting for that.
Thank you from the entire union. As I said at the beginning, thank you all for that. And I think that person was a misplaced joke, but regardless, none of that is welcome at town halls if it wasn't, or literally in our union, because we are all here for each other. And I will say something that I might get in trouble for on this video later on, but I think a lot of the fear that's being spread around is people saying things like, what if they, I'm going to use my New Yorker, what if they try to fuck us? And they always do. They always do. Since we started in this, they're always trying to find a way to do that. And these people have been trying to tighten that, regulate, restrict, and govern that, and emotionally and sacrificing their personal lives and everything to do that. So trust is hard these days, but I'm hoping that this conversation and these types of conversations help you understand that trust and regain it.
Can I add one other? I'm sorry, go ahead, Nicole.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Chase. I want to add another thing I was going to add before the joke or comment. We had a New York background person, we had an LA background person, and we had the king of all background fighting in there. He is. I mean, if you've ever been around Ron Ostro, he is the king of background love. That man is fierce. But aside from that, this is my first time in the room. I own that. I've heard a lot of stories. I've heard a lot of this. What I experienced, for those of you who have not been in the room, is we all came in with our specialties, with our passions, with the things that we were most passionate for. No one in that, not no one, because Jason and I have been working on AD for a long time, but a lot of those people didn't know what audio description was. I have more lines than Jason in every episode of the show, right? I know. Sorry, dude. I get paid nothing. I get paid nothing. I can barely afford a 1-bedroom apartment. Love you.
Bullshit.
But it's bullshit. But the point is when we all spoke to our issues, we went into the AMPTP. It's already been shared publicly, so I can say it. And we presented all of our 900 million, proposals that we had, and we all spoke. And what happened in our room is that, everyone still left on the Zoom, including, we all became passionate about background, passionate about audio description, passionate about translation, passionate about everything. So we tell you that you had people that specifically represented your part of our union in that room, but I need you to know that we all went to the mat for every single one of it, for each other. We became bonded by fire, and we went to the mat for every single thing. And background, we fought for that for the last minute. It's non-permissive, or it's a permissive point, non-mandatory point of bargaining for making it universal coverage, nationwide coverage. So we fought to the last second, and background felt really good in that room for what they got. And we know, as Natalia, was mentioning, and Jason's going to probably say more because he always has to have the good butt on the end, but we got a lot, and we know now how we can get more and move toward it. Yeah, David, I'd said that on purpose.
I just love how well you guys have gotten to know each other being stuck in that room together for so long.
So, but the point is, I just want you guys to really understand, we can't try and screw anybody, because it would be screwing our own careers. It would be screwing our friends and screwing the people that, of our own desire and crazy nerddom, we wanted to go in and represent and do well for our entire union. So please know that it was the entire negotiating committee fighting for background. It was the entire.
Thank you so much. And I'll remind everybody of one of my favorite and most depressing quotes. Be nice to everybody on the way up the ladder, because you'll see them again on the way down. Work is work. We're here for each other. Angel, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. You are muted and not on camera, but we would love to hear your question.
Maybe.
Hello. Thank you. I'm so happy you all are here. I respect you and love you all so much. Hi, Nicole. I raised my hand before Nicole and Jason kind of acknowledged some of the things that I wanted to bring up. I am one of the 0.06% of disabled working actors that Nicole talked about. And I just have a question that I've been getting a lot from my representation, who mainly has a division that's for disabled actors as well as other disabled actors. So as we know, as Nicole said, I'm like, I have some things already written down that I'm like, this has already been acknowledged, but it's already difficult to get in the room and work in general. We barely get the opportunity to play ourselves, right? When disability is written to a character already because of CGI, right? Not even when we're getting into like the AI synthetic stuff, right? This has been years and years of this for us. So do we feel like the AI protections covering recognizable facial features only, rather than including body features like disability, is protecting or even encouraging authentic casting the way that we've encouraged and protected other marginalized groups within DEIA? Or like, do we now feel like it's made them easier for them to not cast disabled actors? And then on top of that, last part of it is, I know we were talking about how they want to report how often they're using these synthetic fakes or digital replicas. I'm probably saying the wrong one or equating them to the same thing right now. But are they going to also, can we find out how often they're eliminating using disabled actors by just making it part of CG or AI or whatever they're using in that capacity?
Well, first I owe you an email, but know that everything you put in your email, I've been working on, and I just haven't had time to email you back, but I've been working on that. Got to be honest, I owe the woman an email. But, our intention with, you know, and I was just texting Jason while we're sitting in this room, you know, we know in our community, the difference between invisible and visible disability. The invisible disability aren't having the struggle that we have to get cast as a visible disability. I walk with a cane and occasional wheelchair for them. She's going, hi, look at my arm. And I don't have my fancy prosthesis on right now, which I have had prop people replicate my arm already for shows. They've just Googled me and seen my prosthesis, and I've been watching, I can name drop shows right now, and been like, that's my arm. They used my arm, you know? You're welcome, but I know that I wasn't protected in that, so I'm not expecting, you know, even more. This is probably more protections that I've had even before this. So it's like, I can go off on a total side note. The night that we TA'd and she was wearing the party arm with all the fun lights on it, it was just magnificent. Look, there are certain holes, and I can't lie about that, but I believe, and Jace, Natalia, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that from what Duncan has said, that if we could prove that it was your arm, then we would be able to go to them and say, you show me the names you used to voice prompt that. And that would be your name. And we would likely, because I don't want to box myself in, be in a space where we could make that argument and move forward. But it is something that we need to, as we move forward, tighten up language on. We have a lot of things we're working on for our inclusion. Yeah. So it's piecemeal. Go ahead, Jace. I hear you.
No, just that the synthetic fake specifically references that it's facial features. And that's where we've got the problem. That's where we got the problem. Natalia, I don't know if you remember if you have do you have the actual language for digital replicas? Because it's voice, image, and likeness. And I believe with digital replica, you'd be protected.
Yeah, with digital replica, you are 100% protected because it triggers. So if it is your actual hand, that triggers under the digital replica, right? Where what Jason is talking about is when it goes into the meat grinder for a different sausage with a bunch of different things, right? That is where the facial feature is the one that is covered. And where physical movement and voice is not, there's that's the hole that
they're not throwing my arm on someone else's face.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing, is that it wouldn't. You know,
if they tried to, they'd
your
have to
arm,
tell
Kim
us.
Kardashian's butt. Any of these things put into the because all conversations lead eventually back to Kim Kardashian's butt. Let's be real. Unfortunately, right now, it would the synthetic fake. If you were part of creating, if you were one of the several people that went into making that synthetic fake, no, we wouldn't be able to right now into this language get consent for you to say you can or cannot use my arm and you have to compensate me.
But they have to tell us.
But they have to
tell us whenever they are using a synthetic fake, and the union will be getting receipts saying what prompts did you put in, what got put in the meat grinder, as much as possible. And the other piece I'll say is we have to fight for diversity amongst the synthetic fakes the same way we fought for diversity and inclusion all across the board, and have been and will continue to fight until the true American scene is represented on the screen regularly without thought. So that's not stopping just because, and in fact, the fact we may have a little bit more room because, like I said, it's consideration, not just compensation. And so if they, first off, they can't ever use, invade the count of background. But I could see a world where they're saying, we're going to use synthetic fakes. We're going to use 40 synthetic fakes above the count in this party scene. And I could see the union saying, okay, a portion of them have to be people of color, a portion of them have to be people with disabilities, blah, 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 blah. You know, putting those are the considerations that we might be able to have a conversation that genuinely they should be doing anyway, because it's just the right freaking thing to do. So
But what if it's just in editing though? That's what's scaring me.
So to that point is right now in the contract with the background situation that Jason just said, after they hit the union number, they're already hiring non-union background, right? So this is where this becomes very important for us to be able to mandate this. And that was the language that I said that we got at the end, which was so important, so that every time they warn us, we can really say, well, you want to use that, you got to pay huge, crazy amount of money, where I said, like, it could possibly go to the foundation and stuff like that, that it helps incentivize them from going that route. And it's just cheaper to hire you and your digital replica.
I just want them to admit what they're doing.
What I want to add to, you know, what Jason and Talia are saying is that's what's written in the contract language. The reason I said I need to talk to Duncan, and I think we might have a place there, is because there's a thing called the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. And the spirit of the facial features is because that would be the one thing that would identify that person. And the spirit of the law would be, this is the one thing that I really want to just flip it off. This is the one thing that identifies you, right? So I believe, and that's why I said, again, I don't want to box myself in. I want to talk to Duncan, that we might have a spirit of the law argument on that for the generative AI. That's all I'm saying. I'm not guaranteeing it, but I think there's a way around that, but we need to fight it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I think Jen wanted to say something. You're muted.
As I'm trying to do 15 things in the back end. So I'm just to slowly wrap this up, because we've definitely gone over time. First of all, thank you, seriously. Everyone, both negotiating committee and everyone who came in to watch this. This was something that we started planning only a few days ago. It's so much better than I ever imagined we would be able to get it. So respectful. So a million thank yous. And to our negotiating committee members, I just want to end on this positive question. What's one thing in one sentence, 2 sentences max, that is you are most proud of accomplishing in this contract that you don't see a lot of people mentioning? Because there's a lot of good in it.
I'll throw out 2 that are connected, because they don't get the hair consultation for textured hair, because there's never been a performer of color who didn't feel like they were on their own when it came to at the very least, the hair department, if not also the makeup department. Makeup's become a lot better in the last few years. And this actually sets them up for success and puts you, and is going to force the conversation forward, force the movement forward. So we make sure that there are actual people in the hair and makeup departments that are qualified to do everyone that might step into that trailer, not just the people that, because you don't have to be able to do textured hair. You don't have to be able to do my hair to get certified in the state of California. But somebody who got trained when they were young to be able to do my hair in order to get certified would have to be able to do my hair and Caucasian hair. So if you've got a person of color in the hair and makeup trailer, they can do everybody, but not the other way necessarily. So that's one. And then similarly, there's a provision that we got in the stunt world that really, I think, is going to help these negotiations. And John, right there, who actually is my union dad, because he brought me into negotiations first 20 some years ago. And I ended up having a conversation about paint downs, which is where they put makeup on a Caucasian performer to stunt double a person of color. It's blackface, or to put a wig on a man to double a woman, right? And we have a provision in there that says that and granted, you can't hire purely on the basis of race legally. So there's a lot of dancing that we had to do, but our staff came up with a really beautiful way to say if you have to if the stunt double looks substantially different from the person they're doubling, you have to consult with the union. So in other words, it's all about education, but it gives some teeth. And if they don't do that consultation, there's the damages can be sought. So you got to check in with the union. So when they say that, I looked everywhere for a man to double this woman, and it turns out they made 3 calls, the union can say that's bullshit, get back in the game, figure it out. In fact, here's a whole list of women that do ride motorcycles, a whole list of women that do martial arts, a whole list of blah, 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 blah. Can help them, solve the problem and actually make sure that that woman or that performer of color, stunt performer of color, gets a job. So those 2 things for me don't get a lot of talking about, but I was particularly proud of those.
Love that, and also jealous of your signed sign behind you. That's amazing. Natalia or Nicole?
Well, definitely the hair and makeup was super important. I think that was such a win. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it for background this time. We fought hard. We fought really hard for that consultation, but I'm so happy that they finally did that. I would say, the other one would be translation. It's not one that might affect a lot of people, but as a performer who speaks another language, I can't tell you how many times we have had to translate with the same amount of turnaround time as any other performer to translate all of our dialogue, and do it for free and try to memorize and work on the thing and then put it on a self-tape. So I'm really, really proud that we were able to get in the contract that they would have to bargain with us if we had to do that. And I even did it. I've had to do it for an actual shoot for a huge Universal Pictures movie, and that translation that ended up on screen is my mother's and mine and my aunt's, and that they never got paid. So one thing I will say on that, is that it doesn't stop any performer from improvising or adding their own flavor or changing words, but just having that protection where they can't abuse us because we have this extra skill was a huge, important piece for me as far as protecting our members that do have that. And then, I think I'm also even just acknowledging our dancers and what they have to go through in rehearsal, and knowing that their rehearsal day could be more gruesome than the actual shoot day, and protecting them. I think those are, there's just so many, but those I think, stand out to me right now at the moment.
Great. Those are, wonderful. Thank you. Nicole?
So
no pressure.
No. First of all, I have to, as Jason said, to them, they thought it was a give. To us, it was a huge win. To the disability community that's been fighting to be counted for decades. I mean, that is a huge win. But, I said to Natalia, we talk a lot, in case y'all don't, like all of us, we talk a lot. I was at lunch with Jason yesterday. It's crazy. I needed a few days to step away from the contract. A few days, because in my heart, every single thing that we walked in with, as we all felt, was just, we didn't have a prioritization list, right? Everything was important. So I needed a few days to step back. And all that we heard was everybody was really focused on AI, which I get, because it's the big, huge, it's the pension and health in 1960, right? It's the big, huge thing. And it's a 600-pound gorilla. But I needed to step back and then to look and hear everything, because some of the stuff we got early, and then some of the stuff we fought like hell after the strike. And I needed to kind of see it all in its entirety to say, what is this really? What is the overall package? So for me, it's hard, because I want to sit here and list like everything that we knew was important walking in the room, everything that was heartfelt to every human being in the negotiating committee. When we would get something, we'd look at that person and just give them the love. So for me, it's that, but it's also in its entirety, and the solidarity that it's created, and the engagement of our membership that is created, I think is hopefully going to be the longest term, biggest win out of this entire contract is this.
I love all of that so much. Thank you everyone who came here to this and who gave up their Saturday afternoon, morning. Again, we just wanted to provide this platform, and it went way better than I even expected or hoped for. I will post this video as soon as we can figure out where to put it, and we will share that far and wide. Please share it to others, especially the people who weren't planning to be here, who needed to hear any of this. And if enough people on socials say they want more of this, we'll do our best and sacrifice our mental health to do even more of it. Because I think these conversations, and to you, NegCom, I have to say, these conversations, human to human, person to person, and your insight from all of your sacrifices, I think are more helpful and informative than anything else we can do. So today, I think you guys made a difference and helped a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you, David and Jen. Thank you for putting this together. We really appreciate it. We appreciate the opportunity to give you some insight into the decisions that got made, how and why, and to humanize the process, because for so many people, part of the issue is, like you brought up trust, David. It's those people behind the curtain made decisions for my life. But the more you begin to realize that those people behind the big scary Oz behind the curtain is actually your neighbor and colleague and scene partner, the more you begin to realize maybe the trust is warranted. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you all. I will end the meeting now to let everyone go, and so it can record. And I'm so paranoid that something's gonna go wrong. We'll talk to you guys on socials and everything. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Love.
Bye.